Chapter 1056. Her identity, background, and strength were impeccable. On top of that, she had a cold and bloodthirsty personality. Princess Luoho was definitely one of the prodigies in the sacred dynasty legacy that should not be provoked. Even Yiguchen was a little surprised. Given Princess Luoho's personality, she should not have helped Pink Playboy, even if he was a prodigy of the Mola dynasty. However, Yiguchen did not know that. The reason why Princess Luoho saved the reddish gentleman was because the reddish gentleman had offered the map fragment he obtained to the Mola dynasty. That was why the Mola dynasty could participate in the sacred dynasty legacy. In addition, Princess Luoho had previously agreed to help Pink Playboy deal with Yiguchen. Therefore, Princess Luoho would naturally intervene now. With Princess Luoho as his shield, the fear on Pink Playboy's face immediately dissipated and was replaced by a calm and smug sneer. Dugu Wubai, I admit that you're not weak, but you're only a Tiandi Lingqiao. You can't do whatever you want here. You deserve to die. The Sacred Cliff College prodigies glared at him. Xuanlian and Ling Mo Shu, the two divine dwelling prodigies, even took a step forward. Pink Playboy's expression changed slightly when he saw that they were about to intervene. At that moment, Princess Luoho opened her red lips and said coldly, if anyone else from Sacred Cliff College participates, the prodigies of the Mola dynasty are not to be trifled with. As soon as Princess Luoho finished speaking, the few Mola dynasty prodigies present braced themselves and stepped forward. If it was just Pink Playboy, they could just sit back and watch the show. However, since Princess Luoho had spoken, the Mola dynasty prodigies had no choice but to step forward. After all, they were still part of the Mola dynasty. That's the godson of the Mola dynasty's heaven divination sect. Looks like Sacred Cliff College won't be able to take advantage of him. Some of the people present began to discuss as they watched the Mola dynasty prodigies step forward. The heaven divination sect's godson was dressed in a black sorcerer robe and looked eerie. Just like the demonic beast sect, the heaven divination sect was one of the biggest sects in the Mola dynasty. This heaven wizard sect's disciple was also ranked 6th on the blood ranking of the Maro dynasty. His strength was not to be underestimated. In addition, the other geniuses of the Maluo dynasty were all on the blood ranking. It could be said that if Xuanlian and Ling Mo Shu interfered, the heaven witchcraft godchild and the others would stop them out of respect for Princess Luoho. Pink Gentleman seemed to have sensed that the situation had been settled and that his life was no longer in danger. He laughed heartily and said, Dugu Wubai, I know that you really want to take my life, but it seems that it's impossible. There was a hint of mockery in the reddish gentleman's tone. On the side of Sacred Cliff College, the faces of many disciples were ashen. On the other hand, Yiguchen's expression didn't change. His eyes were as dark as a bottomless abyss. Are you bent on stopping me? Yiguchen's tone was cold. No matter what, you can't touch him in the sacred dynasty's treasure. Princess Luoho's tone was equally cold. Fine. Yiguchen smiled coldly. Hearing this, the people around shook their heads, thinking that Yiguchen had given in. The people of Sacred Cliff College were silent. They didn't believe that Yiguchen was a coward. Sure enough. Yiguchen's eyes were filled with coldness after he said the word, good. But today, I want him dead. As soon as his words fell, Yiguchen's aura burst out, and his vigorous true chi poured into the 9-dragon thunder prison. Accompanied by a dragon's roar, the soul of a thunder dragon appeared from the sword and charged towards Princess Luoho and Pink Playboy. Yiguchen didn't care about the princess who was ranked 2nd on the blood ranking. How dare you! Princess Luoho shouted coldly and waved the death scythe in her hand. Waves of pitch-black death chi spread out. This death scythe was also a quasi-heavenly tribulation divine weapon with extraordinary power. There was a roar, and the death chi and lightning burst out alternately. 7 slashes of the black moon. Princess Luoho waved the death scythe, and 7 black arcs of light burst out from the scythe, slashing toward Yiguchen. Yiguchen's sword vibrated, and the Ganyang's sword and the star-breaking sword were displayed. They turned into a meteor and collided with Princess Luoho. There was a loud roar, and Yiguchin's figure was pushed back. Princess Luoho's strength was at the third layer of the divine dwelling stage. And Yiguchin only had Tiandi Lingqiao when he didn't use the sky-devouring secret technique. However, such a collision caused the surrounding sky prides to be shaken. The legend of a natural saint is true. Although she only has a heaven and earth spirit bridge cultivation, she can compete with the heaven prides of the divine dwelling stage. And Princess Luoho is not an ordinary divine dwelling stage expert, her cultivation has reached the third layer of the divine dwelling stage. Although Yiguchin was pushed back, his performance surprised everyone. Pink Gentleman's heart was filled with dread. Since Yiguchin could compete with Princess Luoho, it would be a simple matter for him to deal with Pink Gentleman. However, what made Pink Gentleman feel relieved was that at least Princess Luoho could easily block Yiguchin. If that's all you have, save your strength, Princess Luoho said indifferently. Princess Luoho didn't want to use her true chi strength before obtaining a treasure. Yiguchin responded to Princess Luoho with his sword. The two of them once again engaged in a fierce battle. Watching the two people fighting, the surrounding heaven prides were all paying attention. One was the infamous princess of the Moro dynasty, ranked second on the blood ranking. The other was a natural saint who rose to fame in the sword dynasty, Dugu Wubai. Both of them had a strong reputation. Azura Blood Sea Level 18. Yiguchin brought out the Azura Sword Dao's domain of Sword Dao, and terrifying sword chi turned into a sea of blood. Death's Cry. Pure black true chi burst out of Princess Luoho's delicate body, causing the void to shake. She slashed out with the death's scythe in her hand, and it sounded like the death's cry, which was extremely terrifying. Their attacks collided, causing the surroundings to shake. At the same time, Yiguchin brought out the edgeless Sword Dao's domain of Sword Dao, the Gravity Sword domain. Princess Luoho immediately felt her body sink, as if there was a huge force pressing down on her. Not only that, but she also vaguely felt an extreme sense of danger in her heart. Just as the Gravity Sword domain was brought out, Yiguchin's eyes flashed. The Azura Blood Sea Level 18 faintly overlapped with the Gravity Sword domain. Although they hadn't completely merged, the faint power was already enough to make Princess Luoho's cold face change color. She hurriedly dodged to the side, avoiding the attack. However, at the same time, Pink Gentleman was exposed to Yiguchin without reservation. Yiguchin was waiting for this moment. Die! Without the slightest bit of mercy, Yiguchin brought along the power of the two great sword domains and crushed towards the Pink Gentleman. Rumble! The power of the dual sword domain crushed the void inch by inch. Pink Gentleman could only watch helplessly as his body disintegrated inch by inch and turned into a pool of blood. The pain that came from the depths of his soul made Pink Gentleman's demonic face contort to the extreme. Then, he let out a gut-wrenching cry. No! Pink Playboy's eyes bulged and became bloodshot. Endless pain flooded his mind. Finally, under the dazed gazes of all the sky prides, there was a loud thud. Pink Gentleman's head exploded like a watermelon. His entire body was crushed into a pool of blood and dust by the power of the dual sword domain. For a moment, there was dead silence. All the sky prides were shocked. Chapter 1057. Blood-colored dust floated in the air. That was the only trace left behind by the Pink Playboy. Without any resistance, the Pink Gentleman was directly smashed into pieces. The strong visual impact made everyone speechless. Then, they looked at Yiguchin in horror. What kind of terrifying technique was that? Even Princess Luoho, whose expression had turned ugly, could not help but ask, exactly what sort of technique was that? The reason why Princess Luoho dodged was because she sensed the threat. But she didn't expect Yiguchin's move to be so powerful that it killed the Pink Playboy instantly. Even Princess Luoho couldn't save him in time. The surrounding sky prides looked at Yiguchin as if they were looking at a monster. Not to mention the others, even Yiguchin himself was in a daze for a moment. He had only used a little of the ultimate sword domain's power. He hadn't even completely combined the power of the two sword domains. Yiguchen didn't want to expose the ultimate sword domain too early, so he only used a part of it. But even this part of the power was shocking. Not only did it force Princess Luoho to retreat, but it also killed the pink playboy instantly. It could be said that even Yiguchen didn't expect it. It's too powerful. Is this the attack technique of the Heaven Mountain Sword Tribe? Yiguchen exclaimed in his heart. Just a part of the dual sword domain was already so powerful. What about a complete dual sword domain? After the fusion of 3 sword domains and 4 sword domains, how powerful would they be? Yiguchen was suddenly looking forward to it. Now that the pink playboy had died, Yiguchen could finally untie a knot in his heart. At least, he could avenge those Sacred Cliff College disciples who died because of him. Princess Luoho's expression was cold. She said that she would protect the pink playboy. In the end, Yiguchen killed him in front of her. Sensing Princess Luoho's cold attitude, Yiguchen said calmly, "If Princess wants to fight, I will accompany you to the end." In other words, if she wanted to fight, he would fight. Princess Luoho gripped the death scythe tightly. She really wanted to behead this guy who had offended her dignity. However, Yiguchen's methods made her somewhat wary. She had a feeling that Yiguchen was hiding something very deep. In addition, she still wanted to fight for the longevity fruit and other opportunities. It was indeed not a good time to fight with Yiguchen. Thinking of this, Princess Luoho withdrew her aura like a venomous snake sheathing its fangs. Princess Luoho actually admitted defeat. Seeing Princess Luoho's attitude, everyone was stunned. This was the first time this cold and bloodthirsty princess had suffered such a setback. "Dugu Wubai, I'll remember you," Princess Luoho said coldly. Yiguchen had definitely left a deep impression on her. Yiguchen was happy to see Princess Luoho withdraw her fighting spirit. There was no direct enmity between him and Princess Luoho, and Yiguchen did not want to provoke such a powerful enemy for no reason. "Dugu Wubai, you really know how to stir up trouble." At that moment, a faint voice rang out nearby. An extremely handsome young man in white walked over. It was Hua Wuxiu and a group of geniuses. Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, Jiang Fengmian, and the others were among them. Hua Shengjie, Yin Wufeng, Yushuang Yan, and the other geniuses followed closely behind. Although they were slightly weaker, they did not want to miss out on the opportunities left behind by the Sacred Dynasty. Seeing Hua Wuxiu and the others arrive, the people from Sacred Cliff College were all on guard. "Alright, although I will definitely fight with Dugu Wubai, for now, it's better to focus on the opportunities of the longevity tree," Hua Wuxiu said with a smile. "Indeed." Yiguchen nodded. He also needed the longevity wood core. Outside the longevity tree, the tense atmosphere temporarily dissipated. All the geniuses began to circle the longevity tree's array formation and try. But no matter what, they could not enter. As soon as they stepped in, they would be repelled by the array formation. This array formation seems to be a sealing array formation. It has transferred the life essence of the longevity tree to another place. That's why it's isolated from the outside world, Yiguchen muttered to himself. Although he did not know much about array formations, he still had some knowledge about them. After all, he still had the 5 Emperors Cosmos Sword Array and the 6 Dao Ashura Sword Array. Oh, right. Yiguchen's eyes flashed as he suddenly thought of something. He flipped his hand and took out a piece of emerald green crystal from his origin ring. It was what he had obtained after killing those strange plants. Since this array formation repels foreign objects, it should not repel my own life essence. With that thought, Yiguchen infused a wisp of true qi into the emerald green crystal. In an instant, Yiguchen was surrounded by a ball of green light. Yiguchen's heart skipped a beat as he stepped into the array formation. The surrounding geniuses all noticed Yiguchen's action. "Pfft, is this going to work?" Yin Zhu and the others sneered. They could not enter the array formation no matter what they tried. How could Yiguchen crack it so easily? But in the next moment, the sneers on Yin Zhu and the others' faces froze. It was rather laughable. This was because Yi Gu Chen's figure had directly stepped into the formation. There was no repulsion at all. He actually succeeded. The surrounding geniuses were tongue-tied. After a brief moment of shock, some of the geniuses who had killed those strange plants hurriedly took out the emerald green crystals they had obtained. As for those who did not obtain any crystals, they were petrified. Do you all have any? If you don't, I'll give them to you. Yi Guchen saw that this method was feasible and turned around to shout. Most of the Sacred Cliff College disciples had some, but a few did not. Yi Guchen waved his hand and scattered many crystals. Along the way, he had killed many strange plants and obtained many crystals. Enter. Hua Wuxiu and the others also took out their crystals and stepped into the array formation. Then, about half of the geniuses entered the array formation at an extremely fast speed. Only the other half of the geniuses who did not have any crystals were left. It was too late to even snatch them. They could only watch as Yi Guchen and the others fought for the treasures. As soon as they stepped into the array formation, all the geniuses rushed towards the longevity ancient tree at an extremely fast speed. Their target was naturally the dozen or so longevity fruits on the tree crown. The geniuses of the Sword Dynasty needed to obtain the longevity fruits to increase their score for the Sword Sun position. As for the geniuses of the other dynasties, they would not give up on treasures like the longevity fruits. Something's not right. At that moment, Yi Guchen suddenly sensed a strange soul fluctuation. Whoosh! An ancient corpse that was sitting cross-legged suddenly exploded and threw a punch at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen blocked the attack with the 9-dragon thunder prison in front of him. The ancient corpse's fist landed on the sword blade. A burst of energy instantly exploded, causing Yi Guchen's arms to tremble and his entire body to retreat rapidly. Such powerful energy! It must have been at least a supremacy when it was alive. Yi Guchen's eyes were extremely solemn. Although the ancient corpse was dead and could not use its true energy, its supremacy physical body alone was enough to pose a fatal threat to these geniuses. The ancient corpse's explosion seemed to have caused a chain reaction. The hundreds of ancient corpses in the array formation woke up one after another. Although there were no true energy fluctuations, each ancient corpse was at least a supremacy when they were alive. In an instant, the geniuses in the array formation were in a desperate situation. Chapter 1058. The ancient corpse of a heavenly palace sovereign didn't have any true qi. Its physical strength alone was enough to kill a divine dwelling stage prodigy. After all, not all prodigies had an abnormal physical body like Yi Guchen's. However, even with Yi Guchen's perfect physical body and ancient god body, after receiving the punch from the ancient corpse, he felt his arms go numb. He could not bear it any longer. Even Yi Guchen, who had an unparalleled physical body, had such a reaction. As for the other prodigies who didn't have strong physical bodies, it was needless to say. Boom! An ancient corpse clenched its fist and punched at one of the prodigies. That prodigy couldn't block the ancient corpse's punch even if his true qi burst out and resisted with all his strength. With a loud explosion, that prodigy's physical body was directly smashed into pieces by the fist, directly exploding into smithereens. For a time, miserable howls and angry roars could be heard endlessly. Pieces of flesh and blood splattered everywhere. As for the prodigies who were blocked by the formation and couldn't enter, they all retreated far away and immediately fled when they saw that the situation wasn't right. This is troublesome. Not to mention the ordinary prodigies, even top prodigies like Hua Wuxiu and Princess Luo Ho couldn't gain the slightest advantage in the face of these ancient corpses and were beaten back repeatedly. Opposite Yi Guchen, the ancient corpse punched again. Yi Guchen's ancient god power surged and collided with the ancient corpse's punch. With a loud bang, the air exploded, and Yi Guchen's body was pushed back again. What a powerful force! Even with the ancient god power, I can't gain the slightest advantage, Yi Guchen muttered to himself. His expression was a little grave. This was because there were hundreds of ancient corpses here. It wouldn't be long before all the prodigies were killed, and the ancient corpses would naturally focus their attacks on him. At that time, how could Yi Guchen withstand the attacks of hundreds of ancient corpses? do I have to give up? Yiguchen gritted his teeth. The longevity ancient tree could be said to be an extremely rare opportunity. Yiguchen also needed the longevity wood core to refine his clone. If he missed this opportunity, who knew how long he would have to wait before he could gather all the materials again. As for Yiguchen, he had less than 3 years to go to the Heavenly God Sword sect, deal with Di Haotian, and rescue Su Jianshi. Yiguchen needed to refine a clone as soon as possible so that he could control the god-devouring demonic sword. Just as Yiguchen was deep in thought, Su Qingyu's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Yiguchen, didn't you detect that the soul fluctuations of these ancient corpses are very strange? Senior Su, you mean, a soul attack? Yiguchen's eyes lit up when he heard this. These ancient corpses were already dead. There must be a reason for them to awaken now. The only possibility was the strange soul fluctuation Yiguchen had detected earlier. These prodigies were all attacking with true qi, so it was very difficult for them to destroy the ancient corpse. Thinking of this, Yiguchen urged the chaotic sea of consciousness in his mind. Above his sea of consciousness, the meteorite demonic butterfly flapped its wings. Chaotic soul power surged and condensed into a beam of astral soul light that shot toward the ancient corpse's head. The ancient corpse's head had a soul defense that ordinary soul attacks couldn't penetrate. However, Yiguchen had a special sea of consciousness. His chaotic soul power was far stronger than ordinary soul power. In an instant, the astral soul light pierced through the defense. The ancient corpse's head was shattered, and its soul power was extinguished. The entire ancient corpse collapsed to the ground. Success! Yiguchen was elated. He condensed astral soul light and killed the ancient corpse in front of him. Yiguchen's abnormal behavior also caused the surrounding prodigies to react. It's a soul attack. These ancient corpses are afraid of soul attacks, some prodigies shouted. All the prodigies began to use soul attacks. However, not all of them had chaotic soul power like Yiguchen. Therefore, it was a little troublesome to kill them. They weren't as straightforward as Yiguchen. Yiguchen's speed was also at the forefront. Seeing Yiguchen's speed, he rushed to the forefront. Hua Wuxiu, Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, Princess Luo Ho, and the others didn't look too good. His soul power is indeed strange. Hua Wuxiu's eyes darkened. Previously, during the 5 Academies tournament, his Eternal Night Sword domain couldn't suppress Yiguchen's divine soul perception. At that time, Hua Wuxiu knew that Yiguchen's sea of consciousness was also extraordinary. At this moment, all the prodigies were staring at Yiguchen while fighting with the ancient corpses. With Yiguchen's speed, he would definitely be the first to reach the treetop. It was also possible that he had taken all of the longevity fruits. Thinking of this, all the prodigies' faces turned gloomy. However, Yiguchen's next move stunned everyone. After breaking through the encirclement of the ancient corpses, Yiguchen didn't choose to climb to the treetop to pick the longevity fruits. Instead, he directly cut open the trunk of the longevity ancient tree and rushed in. Is that Duga Wubai stupid? Yeah, why didn't he go and pick the longevity fruits? Everyone was puzzled by Yiguchen's actions. It was too abnormal and didn't make sense. Even Hua Wuxiu and the others were surprised. Yiguchen's actions were beyond their expectations. Most people knew the longevity ancient tree best because of the longevity fruits. As for the longevity wood core, not many people knew about it. Therefore, they didn't understand Yiguchen's actions. To Yiguchen, the longevity wood core was definitely 10,000 times more precious than the longevity fruits. Yiguchen naturally knew which was more important. Taking another step back, even if Yiguchen could pick all the longevity fruits first, he would definitely attract the jealousy of all the prodigies and be besieged by them. By then, how would Yiguchen have the chance to find the longevity wood core? Therefore, after careful consideration, Yiguchen still decided to find the longevity wood core first. While the other prodigies broke through the ancient corpses, Yiguchen had already gone deep into the longevity ancient tree. Yiguchen used the 9-dragon thunder prison to open a path in the ancient tree. Not long after, Yiguchen finally arrived at the center of the ancient tree. At a glance, a crystal that looked like a green heart was located in the center of the ancient tree. The green crystal heart seemed to have been carved out of emerald, and it was releasing rich life energy. To a certain extent, it was similar to the emerald crystal that Yiguchen had obtained previously. However, there was a heaven and earth difference between the two of them in terms of the density of their life essence. Is this the longevity wood core? Yiguchen took a deep breath. He stepped forward and carefully plucked the longevity wood core. Waves of rich life essence surged into Yiguchen's body. His arms, which were slightly cracked after being bombarded by the ancient corpse, instantly recovered to their original state. No wonder you need the longevity wood core to refine your clone. Seeing that, Yiguchen could not help but exclaim in admiration. Perhaps only the life essence of the longevity wood core could continue to nourish the clone's body. After losing the longevity wood core, the longevity ancient tree would not die. After a long time, it would condense a new longevity wood core. Thank you. Yiguchen put away the longevity wood core and thanked the longevity ancient tree before retreating. Before he came out, Yiguchen deliberately frowned and pondered. Outside, Hua Wuxiu and the other prodigies had already broken through the ancient corpse's blockade and began to fight for the longevity fruit. Seeing Yiguchen come out with a bitter frown, the surrounding prodigies sneered and shook their heads. Obviously, they mistakenly thought that Yiguchen had gained nothing. Although the longevity wood core is the most important opportunity, it's still very useful to me. I can't reveal it, so the longevity fruit is also something I must obtain. Yiguchen used so near, yet worlds apart. In a flash, he landed on the top of the tree. He also joined the fight for the longevity fruit. Chapter 1059. Dugu Wubai, you didn't gain anything, so now you want to fight for the longevity fruit? Yin Ju and the others said coldly. They naturally didn't want Yiguchen to join the battle. If you say any more, I'll send you to accompany Ouyang Fengyun, Yiguchen said coldly. You killed Ouyang Fengyun. Yin Ju and Shangguan Jingshan's expressions changed. How could they not understand the meaning behind Yiguchen's words? Dugu Wubai, you're indeed crazy. No matter how Ouyang Fengyun targeted you, he's still a heaven pride of the Sword Dynasty. How could you not show him any mercy? Hua Wuxiu said indifferently. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the surrounding Sword Dynasty heaven prides changed as they looked at Yiguchen. It had to be said that Hua Wuxiu was indeed powerful. He wouldn't let go of any opportunity to attack Yiguchen. Ah, so you mean, I'm going to surrender and let Ouyang Fengyun take my life? Yiguchen said coldly. So you're saying that Jin Huan and Yin Gu were killed by you? At this moment, a rough and cold voice sounded. The one who spoke was a man with a rough face and a tiger-headed sword in his hand. His aura was domineering and powerful. He was also an extremely powerful heaven pride of the divine dwelling stage. Overlord Sword Dynasty, Mo Guangdao. Yiguchen fixed his gaze on him. Mo Guangdao was ranked 5th on the sword list of the Overlord Sword Dynasty. He was extremely powerful. When they killed the gold and silver swords, they had said that Mo Guangdao would avenge them. It seemed that it was the person in front of him. So it was you who killed Jin Huan and Yin Gu. I have some friendship with them. How do you think we should settle this score? Mo Guangdao said coldly. As the 5th on the sword list, he definitely had a strong deterrent force. So be it. If you want to settle the score, come at me. Yiguchen's expression was indifferent. He did not back down at all. It was clearly Jin Huan and Yin Gu who wanted to kill him first. Yiguchen had once given them a chance to live, but they did not cherish it. Now, he wanted to settle the score with Yiguchen. What was this? Ha, I've heard that the natural-born saints of the Sword Dynasty have incomparably arrogant personalities. Today, I've finally seen it for myself. I wonder if your strength matches your tone. Mo Guangdao was so angry that he laughed. He was also an incomparably arrogant person. In addition to his own strength, he was also an existence that could sweep away all the supreme talents in the tyrannical Saber Dynasty. How could he stand Yiguchen's provocation? Therefore, he did not hesitate at all. He held the tiger-headed saber in his hand and slashed at Yiguchen. If you want to fight, let's fight. Yiguchen didn't back down either. The nine-dragon thunder prison in his hand swept out and clashed with Mo Kwangdao. The chaotic battle between the supreme talents began again. Everyone attacked each other while trying to snatch the longevity fruit. All kinds of skills and moves shook the void and dazzled in all directions. Sky Tiger Gold Shattering Slash. Mo Kwangdao's divine dwelling stage chi exploded and poured into the tiger-headed saber. A Tiger King Phantom shot out. He slashed at Yiguchen, and the surging saber chi transformed into a heavenly tiger that roared and charged at Yiguchen. Third Ultimate Sacred Sword, Universe Annihilation. Yiguchen displayed two sword moves in a row, and the two merged into one. A destructive wave spread out and collided with Mo Kwangdao's attack. In an instant, an explosive force spread out. Yiguchen took advantage of the shock wave to retreat. He used, so close, yet worlds apart, and rushed toward the longevity fruit closest to him. Yiguchen naturally couldn't be entangled with Mo Kwangdao. His main goal was to obtain the longevity fruit. Yin Ju was already close to the longevity fruit. Just as he was about to pick it, he felt a sharp sword chi about to fall on the back of his head. Damn it, Dugu Wu Bai. Yin Ju's expression immediately changed, and he dodged to the side. Yiguchen took advantage of the situation to pick a longevity fruit. Yin Ju was so angry that his face turned red and twisted. He originally thought that Mo Kwangdao would firmly restrain Yiguchen, but he didn't expect an accident to happen. Even Mo Kwangdao was taken aback for a moment. He originally thought that Yiguchen would fight with him, but who would have thought that Yiguchen's goal was still the longevity fruit? Mo Kwangdao, you can fight with me if you want, but don't even think about getting a single longevity fruit. Yiguchen laughed. Humph. Mo Kwangdao obviously knew that now was not the time to fight with Yiguchen, so he turned to fight for the longevity fruit. Next, it was the battle between the geniuses. Yiguchen relied on, so close, yet worlds apart, and his powerful attacks to obtain 3 longevity fruits in a row. One had to know that there were only a dozen longevity fruits on the entire tree crown. Yiguchen alone obtained 3 longevity fruits, which was already an extremely shocking number. After obtaining 3 longevity fruits, Yiguchen didn't take the initiative to fight for them. He knew that 3 longevity fruits was already the bottom line. If Yiguchen obtained more, he would definitely be attacked from all sides. Even if Yiguchen wasn't afraid, it would still be troublesome. Moreover, to become the Sword Son, the most important thing was to find the fruit of the holy path. That was the most important thing, and the longevity fruit was just a bonus. Besides Yiguchen, Kenpo, Jianxi, Xuanlian, and Mu Xingzu also obtained a longevity fruit each. Hua Wuxiu, Princess Luoho, Mo Kwangdao, and the others also obtained one each. On the other hand, Shangguan Jingshan, Yin Ju, and the others didn't obtain a single longevity fruit. Damn it, Dugu Wubai, how dare you monopolize 3 longevity fruits? Shangguan Jingshan and Yin Ju were both indignant. Even Hua Wuxiu frowned and said, Dugu Wubai, you're too greedy. Yiguchen obtained 3 longevity fruits, which meant that his current results were far ahead of the geniuses of the aristocratic families. He could be said to be second to none. How could they tolerate this? The geniuses of the aristocratic families were definitely not willing to let Yiguchen become the Sword Son. Treasures belong to those who are capable. Why can't I keep what I obtained with my own abilities? Yiguchen said calmly. He had already restrained himself by only obtaining 3 longevity fruits. If he fought openly, he could obtain at least 5 longevity fruits. If that's the case, then there's no other way. Hua Wuxiu took a step forward, and the light and shadow swords appeared in his hands. I didn't go all out during the 5 academies competition. Let's try again now. As soon as Hua Wuxiu finished speaking, the light and shadow swords swept towards Yiguchen. I have the same intention. Yiguchen laughed heartily, without the slightest hint of fear. The 9-dragon thunder prison in his hands flipped, and the sword light illuminated the world, and thunder rumbled in the sky. The two geniuses once again engaged in a fierce battle. Watching the fierce battle between the two, the geniuses of the other 3 dynasties were slightly shocked. These two are both geniuses of the same dynasty, and they're both extremely powerful. Fortunately, their opponents, otherwise, we'd have a hard time, some of the geniuses of the other dynasties thought to themselves. Just as Yiguqin and Hua Wuxiu were engaged in a fierce battle. In the distance, another figure walked over with a majestic gait. He held a bronze pagoda in his hand and wore a bronze mask on his face. He looked like a fiend god, and his aura was unparalleled. It was Jinkue. Beside him stood a few sword sons from the aristocratic family's camp. However, 2 of them, Sword 8 and Sword 12, did not appear. It seemed that they had died. Dugu Wubai, I'll give you one more chance. Hand over the longevity fruit and submit to me. I can guarantee that when I become the true master of the Sword Dynasty, you'll be second only to me. Jinkue said loudly. He did admire Yiguqin's natural sage aptitude. Seeing that Jinkue had arrived and said such words, Kenpo and the other sword sons' expressions changed. On their side, Jian Shisan and Jian Jinghong had not arrived. In your dreams, Yiguqin spat out coldly. As the sword demon of the generation. He was also a young sword grandmaster. How could he submit to someone else? Alright, Dugu Wubai, I'll make you regret this. Jinkue's voice was cold as he raised the bronze pagoda in his hand. 81 flying swords soared into the air and formed a 9-lotus sword array as they charged towards Mu Xingzhu. This scene shocked everyone. They did not expect that Jinkue would attack Mu Xingzhu instead of Yiguqin. Even Mu Xingzhu herself did not react. When she came back to her senses, the 9-colored lotus sword formation had completely surrounded her and was about to kill her. Jinkue, you deserve to die. Yiguqin reacted and shouted angrily like a divine king. However, his opponent, Hua Wuxiu, had a sharp gaze and entangled Yiguqin, preventing him from escaping. The lotus sword formation came down to kill. Mu Xingzhu was about to die. Chapter 1060. Mu Xingzhu was a heaven pride of the divine dwelling stage. With the help of her special abilities, she might be able to put up a fight. However, Jinkue's attack was too sudden. Even Mu Xingzhu could not react in time. As for Kenpo, Xuanlian, Ling Emoshu, and the others, they did not expect such a scene to occur and were not prepared at all. Yiguqin was entangled with Hua Wuxiu and was unable to extricate himself. Mu Xingzhu watched as the 9-lotus sword array pressed down and was about to kill her. At this moment, a graceful figure flashed and blocked in front of Mu Xingzhu. Autumn Maple Sword Dance. With a low roar, the sword chi that filled the sky transformed into maple leaves and scattered. A handsome young man with long blue hair stepped forward with a maple leaf sword in hand. It was Jiang Fengmian. Boom! As the sword chi collided, Jiang Fengmian's figure was blasted back and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. As the 5th on the sword list, Jiang Fengmian was indeed not weak. However, Jinkue was even stronger. This sudden rescue caused everyone to be a little stunned. In particular, the heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty's aristocratic families were even more puzzled and puzzled. Jiang Fengmian, what are you doing? Yin Zhu, Shengguan Jingshan, and the other heaven prides of the aristocratic families all roared angrily. Jiang Fengmian was a heaven pride of the Jiang clan and also a member of the aristocratic family camp. However, at this moment, he actually helped the heaven prides of the unaffiliated cultivators. Let alone the heaven prides of the aristocratic families, even the Divine Cliff and Tianxian College were somewhat surprised. Jiang Fengmian, you. Mu Xingzhu bit her lip and hesitated. During the 5 Academies tournament, Jiang Fengmian had no choice but to attack Yiguqin. At that time, Mu Xingzhu misunderstood him and thought that he was a hypocrite. However, in the face of Jinkue's fatal attack, Jiang Fengmian immediately stepped forward to stop it. There was only one reason why he reacted so quickly. Jiang Fengmian had always been paying attention to Mu Xingzu's situation. Therefore, when Jin Kuei suddenly attacked Mu Xingzu, Jiang Fengmian immediately came to her rescue. From this, it could be seen that Jiang Fengmian's feelings for Mu Xingzu were sincere. Unlike Shangguan Jingshan, who only wanted to possess her. Jiang Fengmian, do you know the consequences of disobeying me? Jin Kuei was furious that he couldn't kill Mu Xingzu in one blow. In his opinion, no one on the aristocratic family's side dared to disobey him. Sorry, I can't sit back and watch Miss Mu die in front of me. Jiang Fengmian's blue hair fluttered in the wind. He held the maple leaf sword in his hand and looked calm. For the love of his heart, he was fearless even in the face of Jin Kuei. This scene made Mu Xingzu's beautiful eyes reveal a complicated expression. She was very grateful for Jiang Fengmian's help and was even a little touched. However, unfortunately, there was already a figure engraved in her heart. Well, in that case, you can die in her place. Jin Kuei attacked again. When Kenpo and the others saw this, they also stepped forward. Jin Kuei, we're not just going to sit around and do nothing. Kenpo, Jian Shi, Suki Miyazaki, Xuanlian, Ling Mo Shu, and the others all stepped forward bravely. On the other side, besides Jin Kuei, Sword 2, Sword 3, Sword 4, and Sword 6 all attacked. Shangguan Jingshan, Yin Ju, and the other prodigies on the sword roll also attacked together. The battle royale between the prodigies began again. However, this time, it was a civil war between the Sword Dynasty. The prodigies of the other three dynasties sat on the mountain and watched the tigers fight. They didn't interfere. Jiang Fengmian, since you've betrayed the aristocratic families, you can only die. Jin Kuei's true energy surged. 81 flying swords circled in the air and turned into a torrent of sword chi that bombarded Jiang Fengmian. Jiang Fengmian blocked with his sword, but he was once again blasted back and spat out a mouthful of blood. In the next instant, Jin Kuei attacked again. At that moment, Mu Xingzu's figure flashed. She used a sword technique and also collided with Jin Kuei's attack. She retreated and spat out a mouthful of red blood. Miss Mu, hurry up and leave. Jiang Fengmian said anxiously. Young Master Jiang, you're standing up for Xingzhu. How can I leave alone? Let's join forces and fight this Jin Kuei. A bright smile appeared on Mu Xingzu's beautiful face. This smile caused Jiang Fengmian to become slightly absent-minded. Humph, you're courting death. Jin Kuei snorted coldly and attacked again. Mu Xingzu and Jiang Fengmian resisted with difficulty and were once again severely injured. On the other side, Yi Guqin was firmly held back by Hua Wuxiu and couldn't free himself. However, Yi Guqin's desire to kill Jin Kuei skyrocketed. It had already reached the point where he wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Mu Xingzhu was his disciple. After all, she was like a family member to him. Yi Guqin wouldn't allow anyone to threaten Mu Xingzhu. Hua Wuxiu, you and Jin Kuei have completely angered me. Yi Guqin's tone was as cold as an ice abyss. Using Mu Xingzhu's life as a threat had already crossed his bottom line. The world only cares about those who succeed. They don't care about how they succeeded. Yi Guqin, the Holy Dynasty's treasure will be your burial ground. Hua Wuxiu's expression was cold. He didn't need to risk his life to fight Yi Guqin now. He only needed to hold him back, and Jin Kuei would naturally take care of Mu Xingzhu, Jiang Fengmian, and the others. As time passed, Mu Xingzhu and Jiang Fengmian were severely injured. Kenpo, Jian Shi, Xuanlian, Ling Mo Shu, and the others were also injured to varying degrees. After all, besides Jin Kuei, their opponents were also Sword 2, Sword 3, Sword 10, Sword 6, and other Sword Sons. The situation was extremely unfavorable for the rogue cultivators. Die! Jin Kuei controlled the 81 flying swords to form a huge sword formation vortex and charged toward Jiang Fengmian and Mu Xingzhu. Get out of the way. Jiang Fengmian pushed Mu Xingzhu away and took the attack alone. With a thud, Jiang Fengmian fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Young Master Jiang. The prodigies on the rogue cultivator's side, including Mu Xingzu, couldn't help but exclaim. It's your turn now. Jiankuei controlled the lotus sword formation again and charged toward Mu Xingzu. At this critical juncture, a blood-red murderous sword ray pierced through the air and broke Jiankuei's attack. Jiankuei's gaze shifted. Jian Shi was pleasantly surprised when he saw that. It's little 13. A group of people approached from a short distance away. The leader was dressed in a gray robe and wore a ghost mask. He held the bloodbath sword in his hand. It was Jian Shisan. Beside him stood Jian Wu, seventh sword, and Jian Jinghong. You're bullying the rogue cultivators when we're not around. Jiankuei, is this all you've got? Jian Jinghong taunted. Jiankuei snorted and stopped attacking. With the arrival of Jian Jinghong and Jian Shisan, Jiankuei could no longer threaten Mu Xingzu and the others, let alone snatch the longevity fruit from Yiguchen. Yiguchen and Hua Wuxiu also stopped attacking after their clash. Seeing the arrival of the prodigies from the Sword Dynasty, the prodigies from the other three dynasties also looked wary. Without any hesitation, they dispersed and left the area to search for other opportunities. After the other prodigies left, only the prodigies from the Sword Dynasty remained around the longevity ancient tree. Jiankuei, I don't care who you are under that mask. But you will pay the price. Yiguchen pointed his sword at Jiankuei, his voice as cold as ice. Chapter 1061. Yiguchen was filled with murderous intent towards Jiankuei's actions. Seeing Yiguchen's attitude, the Sword Dynasty's sky prides all fell silent. They never thought that Yiguchen would dare to provoke Jiankuei like this. What kind of existence was Jiankuei? He was someone who stood at the pinnacle of the Sword Dynasty's sky prides. The number of sky prides who were qualified to be Jiankuei's opponent could be counted on one hand. Dugu Wubai, I will make you despair, but not now. Cherish your last moments. Jiankuei sneered and turned to leave. Now, the most important thing in the Sacred Dynasty's inheritance was to search for opportunities. If Jiankuei were to attack Yiguchen now, Jian Jinghong, Jian Shisan, and the others would naturally not sit idly by. When that time came, it would definitely be a long and messy battle that would last for a long time. And now, what they lacked the most was time. If they were to fight here, they would only be giving away the opportunities to the sky prides of the other three dynasties. Yiguchen also thought of this. He suppressed the surging murderous intent in his heart and watched as Jiankuei and the others left. Dugu Wubai, you and I will also fight it out in this Sacred Dynasty's inheritance. Hua Wuxiu took a deep look at Yiguchen, then left with Jiankuei. Only when the sky prides of the aristocratic families had all left, did the people present let out a sigh of relief. All of them had suffered serious injuries. Master, young Master Jiang, at that moment, Mu Xingzu landed beside Jiang Fengmian and called out while biting her pink lips. Yiguchen also flashed to Jiang Fengmian's side, and his expression turned serious. Jiang Fengmian's blue robe was stained with blood, and he was unconscious. His breathing had almost stopped, and it seemed that he would die soon. Master, do you have any way to save young Master Jiang? Mu Xingzu asked hesitantly. Jiang Fengmian had fought for her and suffered serious injuries. He was about to die, so Mu Xingzu couldn't just sit by and watch. Yiguchen nodded slightly and said, since he risked his life to save you, I naturally can't abandon him. Some of the surrounding sky prides also gathered around. Although Jiang Fengmian was a prodigy from the aristocratic families, he was different from Yin Zhu and the others. He had never deliberately antagonized prodigies from the itinerant cultivator camp. His personality was also quite gentle. Moreover, now that he had stood up for Mu Xingzu, no one could find any fault with him. If possible, the itinerant cultivator prodigies present also didn't want Jiang Fengmian to die. Actually, it's very simple to save Jiang Fengmian, Yiguchen said as he flipped his hand and took out a jade-green fruit that contained rich vitality energy. It was the longevity fruit that he had obtained not long ago. Master, this is too precious. How can I let you spend so much money on it? Mu Xingzu said when she saw that. The other prodigies were also stunned when they saw Yi Guqin's actions. They thought that Yi Guqin would take out some kind of pill to save Jiang Fengmian. They didn't expect him to take out a longevity fruit directly. The longevity fruit's value was unquestionable. Whether it was used to exchange for the Sword Sun's points or as a life-saving item, it was definitely precious. It could be said that if it were anyone else, they might not have the courage to offer up a longevity fruit. Master, use mine. Mu Xingzu also wanted to take out a longevity fruit that she had obtained. Say no more. You all only have one longevity fruit, but I have 3. It's no big deal to take out one. Yi Guqin waved his hand and didn't seem to mind at all. Yi Guqin didn't really need the longevity fruit because the healing power of the ancient god's heart was no less than that of the longevity fruit. Therefore, the longevity fruit was only useful for Yi Guqin to exchange for the Sword Sun's points. In addition, he had 3 longevity fruits. It was no big deal to take out one. In fact, he could even win over a companion. Yi Guqin made up his mind and directly placed the longevity fruit into Jiang Fengmian's mouth. Not long after, the wounds on Jiang Fengmian's body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, Jiang Fengmian trembled as he opened his eyes. I'm still alive. Jiang Fengmian was in a daze. He felt as if he was in a dream. Master used the longevity fruit to save you. A sweet voice with a hint of joy could be heard. Jiang Fengmian looked over and saw Mu Xingzu, Yi Guqin, and the others surrounding him. The longevity fruit. Brother Dugu, you actually. Jiang Fengmian had a complicated expression on his face. Strictly speaking, they were on opposite sides. Jiang Fengmian didn't expect Yi Guqin to use a precious longevity fruit to save him. There's no need to say any more. Xingzhu is indebted to you. As her master, I should be the one thanking you, Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. Thank you. However, you have to be careful this time. Jiankui and the others definitely won't let you off so easily. The Heavenly Sentiment Alliance and the others might also be in danger, Jiang Fengmian said. He also shared some of the information he knew with everyone present. However, Jiang Fengmian didn't participate in the fake sage family's plan. Therefore, he didn't know much. No matter what, we have to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. Our priority is still to search for opportunities. Those who were injured just now should recuperate by the longevity ancient tree. Once they've recovered, we'll search for opportunities, Yi Guqin said. That's right. Our priority is to search for opportunities. Jian Jinghong and the others nodded in agreement. Kenpo and Jian Shi's expressions changed as they looked at Jian Shisan. They wanted to ask something, but in the end, they couldn't open their mouths. They believed that Jian Shisan must have been slandered by the people from the fake sage family. If they were to ask now, wouldn't it mean that they didn't trust Jian Shisan? After that, Yi Guqin, Jian Jinghong, Jian Shisan, Kenpo, and the others continued to search for opportunities. The remaining injured Sky Pride stayed where they were to recuperate. After they recovered, they would continue to explore deeper. Xingzhu, remember, staying alive is the most important thing. If you encounter any danger, leave as soon as possible. Do you understand? I can't always be by your side to protect you, Yi Guqin reminded her one last time. Xingzhu understands. Sensing the concern in Yi Guqin's words, Mu Xingzu blushed slightly. After that, Yi Guqin and the others left. When Jiang Fengmian saw this, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. Young Master Jiang, how are your injuries? Mu Xingzu went up to him with concern. I'm fine, Miss Mu. I finally understand why you don't care about me and Shangguan Jingshen. Jiang Fengmian smiled bitterly. Young Master Jiang, you're a good person, Mu Xingzu said as she bit her lip. I understand now, Miss Mu. If I were you, I would have been tempted to have such a master. Jiang Fengmian smiled and joked. What are you talking about? Mu Xingzu's face turned even redder when her thoughts were seen through. Indeed, Yiguchin's figure had been deeply engraved in her heart. It was impossible to erase it. No other man could replace Yiguchin's position in Mu Xingzu's heart. Even Jiang Fengmian, who had risked his life to save her, couldn't. Mu Xingzu knew that Yiguchin only had a master-disciple relationship with her, but this already made Mu Xingzu very satisfied and happy. She didn't dare to ask for more. Jiang Fengmian also understood Mu Xingzu's thoughts and completely untied the knot in his heart. Even if he couldn't be Mu Xingzu's cultivation partner, it would be good to be friends. Moreover, Yiguchin's rescue had completely won Jiang Fengmian's heart. Brother Dugu, since you saved my life, I should return the favor and persuade my father to help the rogue cultivators, Jiang Fengmian said to himself. His father was Jiang Wen, the head of the Jiang family, one of the 5 great pseudo-saint families. And this time, the person who came to the sacred dynasty's treasure was the deputy head of the Jiang family, Jiang Wen's younger brother, Jiang Wu. Perhaps even Yiguchin himself didn't expect this. He saved Jiang Fengmian's life, which might cause the entire Jiang family to change their camp and attitude. Because Jiang Wen valued his son, Jiang Fengmian, the most. Chapter 1062. While Jiang Fengmian, Mu Xingzu, and the others were resting under the longevity ancient tree, Yiguchin, Kenpo, Jian Jinghong, Jian Shisan, and the others continued their exploration. The sacred dynasty's inheritance is huge, and there are many opportunities. I suggest we split up and search for opportunities on our own. That way, the chances of success will be higher, Jian Jinghong said. That's right. Although it's safe for us to move together, the opportunities we find won't be enough for us to split evenly. Since we've come to the sacred dynasty's inheritance, it's impossible not to take some risks. Yiguchin nodded in agreement. Alright, if that's the case, let's split up. Kenpo also nodded. Jian Shisan held the bloodbath sword in his hand. He didn't say anything, but he nodded in agreement. Then, the group began to split up, heading in different directions. Before Yiguchin left, he took a deep look at Jian Shisan. What kind of face was hidden under that grimacing mask? Was Jian Shisan the one who killed Jian Shisan? Was Jian Shisan a spy from the aristocratic families? Kenpo and Jian Shi had already concluded that it was the aristocratic families who were trying to sow discord. But Yiguchin felt that it wasn't that simple. Jian Shisan was also a man with a story. But no matter what, since Kenpo and Jian Shi didn't question him, Yiguchin naturally didn't have the right to question him. After that, Yiguchin also left alone. The sacred dynasty's inheritance was huge. There were all kinds of dilapidated palaces scattered around. Yiguchin was also searching among the ruins. Now that the opponents are getting stronger, I have to break through as soon as possible. Yiguchin thought to himself as he moved. His current strength was indeed not weak. Yiguchin was absolutely confident that he could kill Gu Shaoyang if he were to fight him again. Of course, as the genius of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Gu Shaoyang would not remain stagnant. It could be said that if Yiguchin used the heaven-devouring secret technique, his strength was enough to fight against some heaven prides of the 3rd layer of the divine dwelling realm. However, secret techniques were secret techniques after all. There was still a difference between raising one's combat power through secret techniques and raising one's cultivation base. Moreover, Jinkuei's strength was also unfathomable. Not to mention, there was also Purple, who was ranked first on the sword leaderboard. Yiguchin did not believe that the mysterious genius would miss the battle of geniuses. Therefore, Yiguchin felt a sense of crisis. I need to ascend to the divine dwelling stage as soon as possible. At the same time, I can also practice the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra again, Yiguchin muttered to himself. If his strength rose to the divine dwelling stage, then he could cultivate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. Yiguchin's strength would soar again. At that time, he would have a place in the battle of geniuses. And now, the opportunity that was most likely to raise Yiguchin's cultivation base was naturally in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Yiguchin made a decision and began to search again. After about half an hour, Yiguchin vaguely sensed a strong and pure spirit chi fluctuation in front of him. Sensing this fluctuation, Yiguchin's eyes lit up. He withdrew his aura and flashed away. An ancient palace appeared in the ruins in front of him. On the plaque of the palace, 3 ancient words were written: Spirit Transformation Hall. There were many palaces in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Most of the palaces had collapsed, and there were no resources in them. But a small number of palaces were still intact because of incomplete formations. There may be unimaginable opportunities in them. Just when Yiguchin was about to appear, suddenly, he saw a guard in front of the palace. He was dressed in golden armor and held a golden spear in his hand. It was none other than Jean Boubi, who ranked 10th on the War God Dynasty's War God list. Jean Boubi had also appeared in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. At that time, Jean Boubi could give Yiguchin some pressure. But now, Yiguchin was not afraid at all. Jean Boubi did not go into plunder, but guarded the door. Could there be? Yiguchin immediately thought of a person. The War God Dynasty's little princess, Zhao Xiaodi. Perhaps only Zhao Xiaodi was qualified to make Jean Boubi a guard. Since Jean Boubi is guarding outside, there must be a rare opportunity in the Spirit Transformation Hall. Yiguchin thought. He did not alert Jean Boubi, but withdrew his aura and took a detour to explore from the back of the palace. There are formations. Yiguchin finally understood why Jean Boubi was only guarding the door. Because in the Spirit Transformation Hall, except for the formation at the door, there were still formations left in the other places. But after the passage of time, the power of these formations had greatly decreased and become very fragile. Given Yiguchin's understanding of formations, he quickly and quietly cracked the formations. He used so close, yet worlds apart, and entered from the back of the Spirit Transformation Hall in a flash. As soon as he entered the hall, Yiguchin saw that there were many jade bottles stored in the compartments of the hall. Yiguchin opened one of the jade bottles, and a strong and pure spirit qi rushed out. What pure spirit qi? These pills are all pills to help improve one's cultivation. Yiguchin's eyes lit up. Although he had received a lot of resources from Sacred Cliff College. But if he wanted to improve his cultivation level, he needed even more resources. Soon, Yiguchin had plundered all the pills in the several compartments. It's not enough. Yiguchin murmured. These pills could, at most, improve his cultivation level by a small level. But what Yiguchin wanted to do was to break through to the divine dwelling stage. Oh, that's right. The vigorous spiritual aura that I felt outside wasn't emitted by these elixirs. Yiguchin thought about it. In his perception, the strong spirit qi was located at the center of the Spirit Transformation Hall. Yiguchin did not hesitate and continued to rush in. But before he even got close to the center, waves of strong spirit qi rushed at him. Taking a deep breath was equivalent to taking a pill. Yiguchin suppressed his presence and quietly approached. The front suddenly opened up to an ancient hall. In the center of the hall was a pool. No, it should not be called a pool, but a spirit liquid pool. Because it was filled with rich, milky white spirit liquid. On the ground, the words Spirit Transformation Pool were carved. This Spirit Transformation Pool must be the greatest opportunity of the Spirit Transformation Hall. Moreover, there was a formation operating at the edge of the Spirit Transformation Pool, which prevented the spirit liquid in the Spirit Transformation Pool from dissipating over time. With the spirit liquid accumulated in the Spirit Transformation Pool over a long period of time, together with the pills I obtained before and some resources in my origin ring, I might be able to break through to the divine dwelling stage. Yiguchin's heart trembled. This Spirit Transformation Pool was his greatest opportunity to break through to the divine dwelling stage. However, just as Yiguchin was about to dash out, bubbles suddenly appeared on the surface of the pool. Immediately, a little mermaid-like figure poked her head out. The girl was delicate and charming, with a head of moist, jet-black hair. Her body was petite and sparkling like jade. Her skin was extremely soft and milky white. It's so comfortable. The girl flicked her hair and grinned. Her two small canine teeth added to her cuteness and playfulness. This girl was the little princess of the war god empire, the girl with monstrous strength, Zhao Xiaodi. Chapter 1063. This, even with Yi Guqin's personality, he was slightly stunned. It was not because of the scene of Zhao Xiaodi coming out of the bath. It was because this was the spiritual pool. A great opportunity that could help people break through their cultivation level was used by Zhao Xiaodi as a bathing pool. This was absolutely a waste of God's gift. Even Yi Guqin felt like his heart was bleeding. Even so, Yi Guqin did not plan to give up. He had to obtain the opportunity in the spiritual pool to break through his cultivation level. After making up his mind, Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed and he flashed out. Yi Guqin reached out and directly suppressed Zhao Xiaodi. He had no grudge against Zhao Xiaodi, and Zhao Xiaodi was just a budding girl and the little princess of the war god dynasty. Therefore, Yi Guqin did not plan to hurt her. He only reached out to suppress her. Ah! Who is it? Zhao Xiaodi, who was enjoying the bath, jumped up like a frightened quail. She turned her beautiful eyes and saw Yi Guqin coming to suppress her. It's you, the born Saint Dugu Wubai. You're still alive. Zhao Xiaodi's little face was filled with shock. Back in the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, she saw Yi Guqin being attacked by Chao Hu with her own eyes. After that, in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure, Zhao Xiaodi did not meet Yi Guqin. She also did not go to the Longevity Ancient Tree, so she did not know anything about Yi Guqin. Now that she saw Yi Guqin appear, she was naturally a little shocked. However, after the shock, she was extremely embarrassed. Because her entire body was clean and smooth. However, Yi Guqin clearly did not have any other intentions. He just wanted to suppress Zhao Xiaodi so that she would not resist. Your Highness, I'm sorry to offend you. I just need to use the spiritual pool. Yi Guqin's arm locked Zhao Xiaodi's delicate body, trying to suppress her first. Ah! Zhao Xiaodi's face flushed red as she screamed in anger and embarrassment. Dugu Wubai, you big bastard, you big pig trotter. Zhao Xiaodi's delicate body trembled as a monstrous force spread out. Even Yi Guqin was slightly startled. He felt as if a savage beast was struggling in his arms. Without any hesitation, Yi Guqin used his ancient god body. Vigorous ancient god power surged and locked Zhao Xiaodi's movements. How? How is this possible? Your power. Zhao Xiaodi realized that she couldn't break free from Yi Guqin's restraints. After all, she was an 8th rank prodigy with a special bloodline. Her strength was unparalleled. In terms of strength, Zhao Xiaodi had never been afraid of anyone. But now, she was being suppressed by Yi Guqin in terms of power. Zhao Xiaodi naturally did not know that Yi Guqin cultivated the ancient god tactics and was the inheritor of the ancient god clan. Even among the 100 ancient clans in the universe, there were few clans that could surpass the ancient god clan in terms of strength. Therefore, it was not surprising that Zhao Xiaodi was suppressed by Yi Guqin in terms of strength. Zhao Xiaodi struggled violently, but she couldn't break free from Yi Guqin's suppression. Instead, because of her struggle, she had a strange feeling. Your Highness, what's the matter? Just then, Jean Boubi's voice came from the palace entrance. He heard Zhao Xiaodi's cry and asked. Do you really want to let Jean Boubi in now? Yi Guqin whispered into Zhao Xiaodi's ear. Zhao Xiaodi's face turned red. If Jean Boubi came in and saw such an unbearable scene, Zhao Xiaodi would definitely want to die. No, nothing. Without my permission, don't come in. Zhao Xiaodi hurriedly shouted. Got it. At the palace entrance, Jean Boubi shrugged and continued to guard outside. Okay, bad guy, what do you want? Zhao Xiaodi's face was red, embarrassed and angry. I said, I just want to use the spiritual pool to make a breakthrough, Yi Guqin said indifferently. Okay, I'll give it to you. Can you let go of me now? Zhao Xiaodi gritted her teeth. Sorry, but just in case, I can only seal your cultivation for now. Don't worry, I'll release you after I make a breakthrough. Yi Guqin continued to restrain Zhao Xiaodi with one hand and put the other hand on Zhao Xiaodi's flat, snow-white abdomen to temporarily seal her spiritual abode. I'll kill you. As the little princess of the war god empire, Zhao Xiaodi had never been wronged like this. She glared at Yi Guqin and raised her eyebrows. She opened her mouth to reveal her silver teeth and two shiny canine teeth. Then, she bit Yi Guqin's arm hard. However, Yi Guqin immediately activated the flawless body of Vajra. With the help of the ancient god body, his arm glowed with a faint purple-gold color. Zhao Xiaodi bit down and immediately cried out in pain. Ah, my teeth! Zhao Xiaodi pursed her pink lips and teared up. She felt that her teeth were about to fall out. Woo, bad guy, I'm going to tell my father, I'm going to tell my brother. They'll definitely kill you, woo, Zhao Xiaodi started to cry, feeling wronged. Her tears dripped down. After making sure that Zhao Xiaodi couldn't break free in a short time, Yi Guqin also let go of Zhao Xiaodi. Zhao Xiaodi immediately took out a dress from her origin ring and put it on. Finally, she wasn't naked. Then, she stopped crying and glared at Yi Guqin like a little tigress. Sorry, Your Highness, before I make a breakthrough, you'll have to stay here. Yi Guqin sat cross-legged in the spiritual pool and prepared to make a breakthrough. He wasn't worried that Zhao Xiaodi would cause trouble. Zhao Xiaodi didn't have much power in a short time since her divine dwellings were sealed. After he was ready, Yi Guqin also sat cross-legged in the spiritual pool and began to make a breakthrough. Humph, Dugu Wubai, you pig trotter, how dare you use this princess's bathwater to make a breakthrough? This princess will curse you to never make a breakthrough. Zhao Xiaodi's face was full of resentment. Obviously, she wanted to affect Yi Guqin with her words. But with Yi Guqin's temperament, how could he be affected by Zhao Xiaodi's words? He secretly guided the devouring power in his body. In an instant, Yi Guqin's entire body seemed to have turned into a black hole. He greedily devoured and refined the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool like a whale. Yi Guqin's cultivation base also rose as a result of the refinement. Just as Yi Guqin was concentrating on cultivating. However, Zhao Xiaodi's eyes were rolling around. On one hand, she was secretly attacking the divine dwelling seal set by Yi Guqin. On the other hand, she was secretly sending a message to another person. Although Zhao Xiaodi had always been disgusted by that person's pursuit. But now, it seemed to be a good choice to let him deal with the hateful guy in front of her. In another palace ruin in the Sacred Empire's treasure trove. A handsome young man dressed in a brocade robe, wearing a golden crown on his head, and holding a golden folding fan in his hand, was plundering opportunities. He was a false saint expert of the war god empire, the son of the heroic marquis. He was ranked 7th on the war god list and was known as the heroic marquis. His name was Zhong Shan. At this moment, Zhong Shan received a message, and his handsome face instantly lit up with joy. Her Highness sent me a message. Zhong Shan was overjoyed. He had been pursuing Zhao Xiaodi, but there had been no results. However, when he saw the content of the message, Zhong Shan's face instantly lit up with anger. Damn it, that damn Dugu Wubai, a trash who isn't even at the divine dwelling stage, dares to provoke the little princess. Wait for me to teach him a lesson. Although Zhong Shan had heard some rumors about Yi Guqin, he always felt that it was a false rumor and could not be taken seriously. He closed the folding fan in his hand with a snap, and his figure turned into a stream of light and sped away. Chapter 1064. Just as Zhong Shan was rushing towards the spirit transformation hall, Yi Guqin was also completely immersed in his cultivation, and only spared a wisp of his mind to stare at Zhao Xiaodi. Can't break through, can't break through, can't break through. Zhao Xiaodi muttered with a bitter face, constantly cursing Yi Guqin for not being able to break through. However, boom! Yi Guqin's body shook, and a surge of essential qi burst out. His cultivation level, from Tiandi Lingqiao, broke through to the 8th stage. He broke through just like that. Zhao Xiaodi's pretty eyes widened in disbelief. Even with the assistance of the spirit transformation pool, it was absolutely not that easy to refine such a vast amount of spirit qi. At least Zhao Xiaodi was unable to break through in a short period of time. But how would she know that Yi Guqian possessed the power of devouring, and that his dantian contained the existence of the ancient demon sword, the devourer god? Therefore, Yi Guqian did not feel the slightest pressure to refine any spirit liquid, elixir, sacred medicine and so on. He could quickly absorb and transform them. Yi Guqian's figure was still motionless. The 8th stage of the heaven and earth spirit bridge was not his goal. Next, Yi Guqian continued to frantically absorb the power of the spirit transformation pool. The height of the spirit transformation pool was also decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a few moments, it had decreased by half. This Dugu Wubai, to break through a small stage, he needs to consume such a huge amount of spirit qi. Zhao Xiaodi was momentarily surprised, but also temporarily threw her shame and anger to the back of her mind. The amount of spirit qi that Yi Guqian needed to break through a small stage was most likely comparable to the amount of spirit qi that an ordinary heaven's pride needed to break through to the divine dwelling stage. What a monster! His strength is greater than mine, and he needs so much spirit qi to break through. Zhao Xiaodi stared at the rapidly decreasing spirit transformation pool, feeling like her heart was dripping blood. Although it was true that she was bathing in it, Zhao Xiaodi also intended to collect the spirit liquid in it later. But now, Yi Guqian had taken advantage of all of this. Despicable Dugu Wubai! How dare you drink this princess bathwater? Helpless, Zhao Xiaodi could only console himself with a mental victory. Not long after, Yi Guqian's body once again surged with majestic genuine qi. He had broken through to the 9th level of the heaven and earth spirit bridge. What comes next is the most important. Yi Guqian's expression turned serious. Breaking through a small realm wasn't a big deal, but the heaven and earth spirit bridge to the divine dwelling stage was a major hurdle. If he could break through, Yi Guqian's strength would undoubtedly skyrocket. Only then would they truly have the confidence to compete with Jian Kuei, Hua Wuxiu, Princess Luoho, and the others for the fruits of sacred Tao. Come. Without much hesitation, Yi Guqian once again entered a meditative state, preparing to break through. Yi Guqian was not one to be afraid of the slightest thing. He needed to be courageous and diligent in his cultivation. He began to refine it again. This time, the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool was consumed even faster. Seeing this, Zhao Xiaodi's heart ached. Yi Guqian's cultivation had also gradually climbed to the divine dwelling stage. It's not enough. Yi Guqian sensed the situation and found that the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool was slightly insufficient. The spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool had accumulated for so many years, but it was barely enough to push Yi Guqian's cultivation to the divine dwelling stage. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was for Yi Guqian to break through. Without hesitation, Yi Guqian once again took out the spirit pills he had plundered in the palace, refined them all, and integrated them into his dantian. It's not enough. Yi Guqian once again took out various pills from his origin ring. He even took out 2 precious sacred medicines. These were resources given to him by Sacred Cliff College. Is this Dugu Wubai crazy? He needs so many resources to break through. Zhao Xiaodi was a little dumbfounded. Even when she broke through to the divine dwelling stage, she didn't consume so many resources. Rumble. As the numerous resources were refined by Yi Guqian, the bottleneck of his divine dwelling stage also began to loosen. In his dantian, rich true qi transformed into liquid and surged violently. Vaguely, it seemed as if a divine dwelling was about to appear. Yi Guqian completely activated his devouring power, sucking up the last drop of spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool. In addition to the power of the pills and sacred medicines, all of them were absorbed into his dantian. There was a rumble. Yi Guqian's dantian, as if it was splitting the sky and earth, produced a loud rumble. An illusory divine dwelling was finally formed. An unprecedented power surged out from the divine dwelling, flowing to Yi Guqian's limbs and bones. A wave of chi burst out from Yiguchen's body, causing the entire spiritual hall to rumble and shake violently. Is this the power of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage? Zhao Xiaoti's beautiful eyes widened. The commotion caused by Yiguchen's breakthrough had completely stunned her. She felt that the current Yiguchen seemed to have become a divine king. It was only then that Zhao Xiaoti understood the meaning of the so-called natural saint. The rumbling waves naturally alarmed Jean Bubi, who was guarding outside. Huh, what's going on? This aura, is Her Highness cultivating? Isn't it too shocking? Jean Bubi's face was full of surprise. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly flashed in the distance. It was a handsome young man in a brocade robe. It was the young Marquis, Zhong Shan, who had rushed over after hearing the news. Well, Zhong Shan, why are you here? Jean Bubi frowned when he saw the person. He remembered that Zhao Xiaoti seemed to dislike the young Marquis. Jean Bubi, you're really stupid. Her Highness has been kidnapped, and you're still standing outside like a fool. Zhong Shan angrily rebuked, brushing past Jean Bubi and entering the hall. What? Jean Bubi was also taken aback. He also turned around and stepped into the hall. In the center of the hall, the entire dried-up spiritual pool shattered, and the surrounding formations were completely obliterated by the shock waves. Yiguchen withdrew his aura. He felt that his strength was unprecedentedly strong. Is this the feeling of the divine dwelling stage? Yiguchen muttered to himself. It was impossible to understand this feeling without breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. The difference between the heaven and earth spirit bridge stage and the divine dwelling stage was very big. Even if Yiguchen had used the sky-devouring secret technique to forcibly raise the amount of his chi to the divine dwelling stage, there was still a difference between it and the real divine dwelling stage. Now, even if I don't use the sky-devouring secret technique, I can easily contend with Hua Wuxiu and other heaven prides. If I use the sky-devouring secret technique, I can even suppress them. Even if it's the mysterious Jiankui, I don't have to be too afraid. At least he can't pose a fatal threat to me. Yiguchen roughly measured his strength. It had increased by more than several times. In short, it was an all-round improvement. Unfortunately, although I have condensed a divine dwelling, it is still incomplete. I still need to practice the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, pass the 4 tribulations of earth, water, fire, and wind, and shatter my divine dwelling again and again. Yiguchen didn't forget one of his greatest trump cards, the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. The quality of the divine dwelling was divided into incomplete, flawless, leakless, and the legendary world. Yiguchen's ambition was not just to condense a divine dwelling. He wanted to condense the highest quality divine dwelling. Just as Yiguchen was deep in thought, a rumbling sound was heard. Zhao Xiaoti had finally broken the seal of the divine dwelling and recovered her strength. She ground her sparkling little canine teeth, staring at Yiguchen with a fierce expression. At the same time, Zhong Shan and Jean Bubi also arrived. Oh, just right, I want to know how strong I am now. Looking at the 3 people, Yiguchen not only didn't show the slightest fear, but instead revealed a faint smile. Chapter 1065. Yiguchen just happened to want to measure his strength as a divine dwelling expert. The arrival of Zhong Shan and the others gave Yiguchen this opportunity. Your Highness, are you alright? Zhong Shan's gaze fell on Zhao Xiaoti as soon as he arrived. Although Zhao Xiaoti was only 13 years old, she would be able to talk about marriage in 2 years. And Zhong Shan was one of Zhao Xiaoti's most loyal suitors. But at this moment, Zhong Shan saw that although Zhao Xiaoti's face was filled with anger, there was still a faint blush on her cheeks, which made her look even more adorable. No, I'm fine. Suppress this abominable big bad guy. Zhao Xiaoti's beautiful eyes flashed with panic. She didn't want to reveal the embarrassing things that happened between her and Yiguchen. She was still an unmarried maiden. However, seeing Zhao Xiaoti's reaction, Zhong Shan increasingly felt that something was wrong. Something seemed to have happened between the two of them. At the thought of this, Zhong Shan became a little upset, and he couldn't help but become angrier. He stared coldly at Yiguchen. You're the Sword Dynasty's natural saint, Dugu Wubai. You're really lucky to not die in the beast tide, but now, you dare to provoke the princess. You're courting death. Zhong Shan shouted coldly. He naturally wanted to show off in front of Zhao Xiaodi. To the side, Zhan Bubi was also a little taken aback. He didn't expect Yiguchen to be here. But compared to Zhong Shan, he was more wary of Yiguchen. After all, he had seen Yiguchen fight in the ancient Chaos Wasteland with his own eyes. Yiguchen wasn't weak at that time, and now that he had broken through, he must be even stronger. In the face of the hostility of Zhong Shan and the others, Yiguchen's expression was extremely indifferent. He just happened to lack a punching bag. If you want to fight, then come. Yiguchen smiled faintly. Do you think you're fearless after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage? Ridiculous. Zhong Shan was eager to show off in front of Zhao Xiaodi, so he did not hesitate to attack. In his view, Yiguchen had just broken through to the divine dwelling stage, and his aura and cultivation level must be unstable. Therefore, his chances of winning were very high. But what he didn't know was that Yiguchen's cultivation had always been steady and steady. Even though he had just broken through to the divine dwelling stage, his aura was still very steady and stable. Zhong Shan flipped the golden folding fan in his hand and it transformed into a gorgeous thin sword, thrusting towards Yiguchen's chest. Yiguchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. Vigorous true qi burst out from the divine palace in his dantian and poured into the sword. In an instant, the 9-dragon thunder prison seemed to have awakened. The entire longsword emitted endless lightning. 1 head, 2, 3 heads, a total of 5 lightning dragon souls appeared from the 9-dragon lightning prison sword. Obviously, with Yiguchen's current strength, he could fully exert the power of a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Divine sword lightning controlling art, myriad lightning transformations. The soul of the 5 thunder dragons swept towards Zhong Shan along with the terrifying thunder and lightning sword. In an instant, Zhong Shan's expression changed drastically. He felt the powerful power of Yiguchen's move. How is this possible? Zhong Shan couldn't help but exclaim. The next moment, the clanging of swords colliding rang out, and at the same time, a figure vomited blood and was sent flying. The person who vomited blood was Zhong Shan. At this moment, Zhong Shan's arm was charred black, and blood was spurting from the corners of his mouth. His eyes were wide open, and his heart couldn't help but set off stormy waves. Zhong Shan's strength was indeed not weak. He was also a heaven's pride of the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. His strength was not at the top among the heaven prides of the 4 empires, but he was at least in the upper echelons. But he was injured in a single blow from Yiguchen. This. Zhao Xiaodi's little mouth also opened, and her beautiful eyes were somewhat dazed. She didn't expect Yiguchen to have such strength as soon as he broke through to the divine dwelling stage. Sorry, I didn't control my strength well. Yiguchen shook his head. He had just broken through and hadn't fully adapted to his powerful qi, so he didn't control his strength too well. But these words were incomparably harsh to Zhong Shan's ears, like an extreme humiliation. I absolutely don't believe you. What are you so arrogant for? Zhong Shan's face was ugly. He gathered the powerful qi in his body and slashed out again. Yiguchen also swept out with his sword. Puqi. However, the result was the same. Zhong Shan was sent flying again, vomiting blood. Come at me together, Yiguchen said with a faint smile. Zhong Shan alone couldn't measure his true strength. Damn it. Zhong Shan's face was anxious and angry. He wanted to show off in front of Zhao Xiaodi, but he didn't expect to be in such a sorry state. Dugu Wubai, you've gone too far. Zhan Bubi also attacked. The two of them joined forces to deal with Yiguchen. However, Yiguchen's strength had increased greatly after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. His sword swept out, and the souls of the 5 thunder dragons roared and swept out with endless thunder and lightning. Any sword move that Yiguchen used was several times more powerful than before. There was no suspense. Zhong Shan, who was ranked 7th on the war god list, and Zhan Bubi, who was ranked 10th on the war god list, were still sent flying by Yi Guqin. I don't believe it. Zhao Xiaodi gritted her teeth. Zhong Shan and Zhan Bubi couldn't defeat Yi Guqin even after joining forces. It was a disgrace to the war god dynasty. Zhao Xiaodi took out her signature golden hammer and joined the battle as well. Good timing. Yi Guqin smiled when he saw this. He fought with the three of them again. Zhao Xiaodi swung the golden hammer with her small hand. Every strike was as heavy as Mount Tai. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand this mountain-like power. But Yi Guqin, who was supported by the power of the ancient gods, wasn't afraid in the slightest. After a round of fighting, Yi Guqin used the 3 ultimate moves of the Holy Sword, Moon Falling Star Sinking Vast Sun Break, and sent the 3 of them flying. Zhao Xiaodi sat on the ground and cried out in grievance, "Stop fighting. You two trash can't defeat Dugu Wubai even if you join forces." Your Highness, this. Zhong Shan's face alternated between green and white. He was extremely embarrassed. The way he looked at Yi Guqin was also faintly filled with resentment. But he didn't dare to do anything because he was afraid that Yi Guqin would do something to him. Do you still want to fight? Yi Guqin said indifferently with the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. He had more or less measured his own strength and had completely grasped the power of the divine dwelling stage. Therefore, Yi Guqin didn't intend to delay any longer. Dugu Wubai, do you know that my father, the heroic martial marquis, is still outside? How dare you treat me like this? Zhong Shan brought up his background when he saw that he couldn't defeat Yi Guqin. Having a father who was a false saint expert should make Yi Guqin a little wary. However, Zhong Shan was wrong. Are you threatening me? The smile on Yi Guqin's face faded, and his eyes turned cold. Swoosh! In the next moment, Yi Guqin dashed toward Mount Zhong. Dugu Wubai, how dare you? Zhong Shan's face suddenly changed, and he turned pale with fright. Puchi! The 9-dragon thunder prison pierced through Zhong Shan's shoulder. Yi Guqin stomped his foot, breaking several of Zhong Shan's ribs. Blood gushed out from Zhong Shan's mouth, and his body twitched uncontrollably. I'm not afraid of threats, Yi Guqin said with an indifferent expression. Chapter 1066. Blood kept gushing out of Zhong Shan's mouth and he couldn't speak clearly. His face was frighteningly pale. Big bad guy, don't kill him. Zhao Xiaodi cried out. Although she hated Zhong Shan was the son of the heroic marquis and also a genius of the war god dynasty. As the princess of the war god dynasty, Zhao Xiaodi couldn't turn a blind eye to him. Hearing Zhao Xiaodi's voice, Yi Guqin's expression softened. No matter what, Zhao Xiaodi was the one who found the spiritual pool first. Yi Guqin had overtaken her. Therefore, Yi Guqin would give Zhao Xiaodi face. He didn't have a particularly big grudge with the war god dynasty. But if he offended Zhao Xiaodi too much, there would be some trouble in the future battlefield of geniuses. Yi Guqin wasn't afraid of trouble, but there was no need to cause more trouble. I'll let you go for Zhao Xiaodi's sake, but... Yi Guqin paused and directly took the vitality ring from Zhong Shan's finger. You. Zhong Shan almost fainted when he saw that. Yi Guqin checked Zhong Shan's vitality ring. There were a lot of resources in it. Just the heaven crystals alone were as many as 1,000,000. Not to mention the many resources that Zhong Shan had painstakingly plundered from the sacred dynasty's treasure, such as elixirs, old herbs, crystals, minerals, and so on. There were even 2 ordinary sacred herbs, which was a pleasant surprise. You have to pay the price for saying the wrong thing, don't you think? Yi Guqin didn't hold back at all and plundered all the resources in Zhong Shan's vitality ring. More blood gushed out of Zhong Shan's mouth when he saw that. This meant that he had worked for nothing in the sacred dynasty's treasure. All the resources had been plundered by Yi Guqin. Alright, farewell, everyone, Yi Guqin said lightly. He had to hurry up and find other opportunities. Wait. Zhao Xiaodi gritted her teeth and stared at Yi Guchen angrily. Is there anything else? Yi Guchen asked. Zhao Xiaodi puffed up her cheeks and said, you took my spirit-dissolving pool and used it to break through. Now you want to leave just like that? Then what does your highness want? Yi Guchen asked. Zhao Xiaodi turned around and looked at Zhong Shan and the others, you two leave first, I don't need you anymore. Zhong Shan stood up with difficulty and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His face was pale as he looked coldly at Yi Guchen, but he didn't dare to say anything. He could only leave with a heart full of grievances. Zhan Bubi was also very tactful. He did not provoke Yi Guchen and turned to leave. Soon, only Zhao Xiaodi and Yi Guchen were left in the hall. I want you to agree to two of my requests. Zhao Xiaodi placed her hands on her waist and said. Tell me about it, Yi Guchen said. First, you are not allowed to mention what happened before to anyone. Zhao Xiaodi's face flushed red as she recalled the scene of her naked body being locked up by Yi Guchen. She was a little embarrassed. She was the little princess of the war god dynasty. Her status was incomparably noble. Normal men didn't even have the right to touch her. Yi Guchen was the first man to have such intimate contact with Zhao Xiaodi. If this shocking news were to spread, even her father, the Heaven War Emperor, would come looking for trouble with Yi Guchen. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't do something so despicable. Yi Guchen shook his head and laughed. He didn't have any big grudges with Zhao Xiaodi. Even if they were mortal enemies, Yi Guchen would only defeat them head-on and would not use such underhanded methods. That's good. Zhao Xiaodi's expression softened. She continued, the second request is that I want to follow you. Yi Guchen was puzzled. Humph. You took away the fortune of the spirit pool and caused this princess to suffer a loss. From now on, I will follow you, and I want a share of the fortune. Zhao Xiaodi's beautiful eyes rolled around. In reality, Zhao Xiaodi was feeling a little guilty. With Yi Guchen's current strength, she couldn't force him to follow her. If she angered Yi Guchen, it was possible that he would directly suppress her. However, Zhao Xiaodi wasn't willing to let the opportunity of the spirit pool be taken away from her. A faint smile appeared on Yi Guchen's face as he looked at Zhao Xiaodi. Zhao Xiaodi felt a little guilty under Yi Guchen's stare. So, she said in a strong voice, what's wrong? Can't I? This request isn't too much. After all, you've consumed the entire spiritual pool by yourself. With this in mind, Zhao Xiaodi felt wronged. She pouted and tears welled up in her eyes. Yi Guchen didn't say anything and turned around to leave. Seeing this, Zhao Xiaodi tentatively followed behind Yi Guchen. Seeing that Yi Guchen didn't say anything to stop her, Zhao Xiaodi's expression immediately changed, revealing a sly smile. With the strength that Dugu Wubai has shown, I can do whatever I want in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove, Zhao Xiaodi said with a mischievous smile. The reason why Yi Guchen acquiesced was because he had indeed snatched Zhao Xiaodi's opportunity. Moreover, Yi Guchen had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, which could be considered as having achieved one of his goals. As for the battle for the Sword Sun position, as long as he could obtain the Saint Dao fruit, it wouldn't hurt to let Zhao Xiaodi have a share of the remaining opportunities. Next, Zhao Xiaodi followed Yi Guchen to search for opportunities in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. In another place, outside the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, a purple-winged bat dragon descended from the sky. Standing on the bat dragon's back was a purple-haired Heaven's Pride. He wore a purple mask on his face, and his imposing manner was high and mighty. He had a powerful aura that could devour mountains and rivers. It was the mysterious Heaven's Pride ranked first on the sword list, Z. As he landed in the mountain range, some demonic beasts also gathered around. But a roar from the purple-winged bat dragon sent chills down the demonic beasts' spines, causing them to flee in all directions. The entrance to the sacred dynasty's treasure trove is just ahead. Z steered the purple-winged bat dragon and landed at the entrance of the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. The next battle is going to be interesting. Zi's body rose into the air, and then, in a flash, he swept through the entrance of the treasure trove. The purple-winged bat dragon soared back into the sky. The heavens prides of the four empires in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove were unaware that a super-powerful heavens pride had joined the heavens pride battle. One could imagine that Zi's arrival would cause a huge change to the situation in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Yi Guqin was also unaware of the mysterious heavens pride's arrival. He was now searching for resources with Xiao Xiaodi. Along the way, Yi Guqin had also plundered many palaces, and there was no lack of precious resources among them. Yi Guqin was not stingy either, and half of them were taken by Xiao Xiaodi. Xiao Xiaodi's face no longer had the grievance from before, and her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Mine, mine, they're all mine. Xiao Xiaodi was like a greedy little female dragon as she plundered the treasures. Yi Guqin was not bothered by it either. The most important thing to him now was the fruit of the sacred path, and the last thing he needed to refine his clone, the crystallized soul source. After plundering another palace, Yi Guqin and Xiao Xiaodi walked out. At this time, there were some heavens prides in the distance, rushing towards a certain place in the depths of the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Yi Guqin immediately stepped forward and stopped them. What happened? Yi Guqin asked. That heaven's pride had just shown anger on his face when he saw Yi Guqin and Xiao Xiaodi clearly. The sword dynasty's natural saint, and the war god dynasty's little princess. That genius was taken aback. These two were extremely reputable figures. But how did they get together? I'm asking you a question. What happened? Xiao Xiaodi shouted. It seems that a heaven's pride coincidentally activated a certain array, and made a sacred palace appear. That heaven's pride did not dare to not answer. Sacred palace. Yi Guqin's eyes revealed a strange look, and his heart skipped a beat. Sacred palace, with the word saint in it, might be related to a saint. Was the greatest opportunity in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove finally about to appear? Chapter 1067. Yi Guqin had not forgotten that the greatest opportunity in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove was the Saint Dao fruit. Although the Saint Dao fruit was useless to Yi Guqin now, he needed to use the Saint Dao fruit to win the Sword Sun seat. He had even promised Ling Qianhen that if possible, he would help him get a Saint Dao fruit. And the name of the sacred palace seemed to be related to the heavenly tribulation saints. It might be the greatest opportunity in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. So Yi Guqin naturally would not miss it. Soon, Yi Guqin and Xiao Xiaodi locked onto the location of the sacred palace after some inquiries. At this moment, almost all the heaven prides of the four empires in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove were converging towards the sacred palace. It was easy to imagine that there would be a fierce battle between dragons and tigers in the future. After about half an hour, Yi Guqin finally approached the location of the sacred palace. Is the sacred palace in front? Yi Guqin looked around and saw an incomparably magnificent and ancient giant palace, located in the deepest part of the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Although it had been sealed and baptized by time, the palace still stood tall and majestic, as if it had witnessed the glory of the ancient ruins' sacred dynasty. At the same time, Yi Guqin could also vaguely feel that there seemed to be an array formation fluctuation at the bottom of the sacred palace. Although the array formation fluctuation was very weak and still. But Yi Guqin still had a faint feeling of apprehension. It seems that the sacred palace is not that simple, Yi Guqin thought to himself. While he was thinking, there were many whooshing sounds around him. It was obvious that most of the heaven prides in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove were converging towards the sacred palace. Yi Guqin's footsteps flashed as he approached the sacred palace. At this moment, a large group of heaven prides had already gathered outside the sacred palace. They were all bombarding the gate of the sacred palace. The gate of the sacred palace was more than 10 feet tall and had a mottled bronze color. Even without the protection of the array formation, it was still incomparably sturdy. Even if the divine dwelling heaven prides joined forces, it would be difficult to break it in a short time. Yi Guqin had just arrived outside the temple when he saw some familiar faces. The geniuses of Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College were among them. Jian Jinghong, Kenpo, and Jian Shirsan were also present. Senior brother Dugu is here. A Sacred Cliff College disciple noticed Yi Guqin. Master. Mu Xingzu and the others were also pleasantly surprised. After recuperating by the longevity ancient tree, they continued to search for opportunities together. Then, they went all the way to the sacred palace. Yi Guqin stepped forward and exchanged some pleasantries. Master, she. Mu Xingzu looked at Zhao Xiaodi. Why is the little princess of the war god empire following senior brother Dugu? The surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples were also surprised. There were even some people who had looks of admiration on their faces. As expected of senior brother Dugu. He can even tame the little tigress of the war god empire. Some disciples lowered their voices and praised. What did you say? Say it again. Zhao Xiaodi seemed to have heard some of the discussion. She widened her eyes and waved her fist threateningly. No, nothing. The disciples hurriedly retreated. Although Zhao Xiaodi was young, her strange strength was unparalleled. Everyone was afraid of her. All right, stop fooling around. It seems that this sacred palace should be the greatest opportunity in the sacred dynasty's treasury. Yi Guqin waved his hand. Indeed, if there is a sacred Dao fruit, it might only exist in this sacred palace, Kenpo said. The sacred Dao fruit was a great opportunity that the four dynasties were fighting for. It was related to the birth of a heavenly tribulation saint. Although a false saint who refined the sacred Dao fruit might not necessarily be able to survive the heavenly tribulation. But at least the possibility would greatly increase. Yi Guqin also saw Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and other heaven prides in the crowd outside the sacred palace. They were all staring coldly at Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's aura was restrained at this moment, so they didn't notice that Yi Guqin had broken through to the divine dwelling stage. In addition, Zhong Shan and Zhang Bubi also came here. When he saw Zhao Xiaodi safely following Yi Guqin, Zhong Shan trembled with jealousy. But he wasn't a fool, and he didn't dare to provoke Yi Guqin again. It was just that he felt like he had seen someone cuckold him with his own eyes. Although Zhao Xiaodi had never had anything to do with Zhong Shan had already decided that Zhao Xiaodi was his. Dugu Wubai, although I can't deal with you, you are now the target of public criticism, Zhong Shan said viciously. He also knew that Yi Guqin had made enemies on all sides. Not to mention Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and the others, even the heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty, such as Jin Kuei, Hua Wuxiu and the others, also had a huge grudge against Yi Guqin. Therefore, Zhong Shan believed that even if he couldn't deal with Yi Guqin, the others could kill Yi Guqin. Ha, found it. At this moment, a hearty laugh sounded. Hearing this voice, the faces of Kenpo and the others darkened. In the distance, a group of people led by Jin Kuei had arrived. In addition to the several sword sons of the aristocratic family camp. Hua Wuxiu, Yin Zhu, Shengguan Jingshen, and the others were all there. Hua Shengjie, Yushuang Yan, Yin Wufeng, and the others also followed closely behind. It could be said that among the four dynasties present, the Sword Dynasty had the most heaven prides. Unfortunately, the itinerant cultivators and the aristocratic family camp were like fire and water. Although the other three dynasties did not have the advantage in terms of numbers, they were all elites and had the ability to fight. Let me do it. Jin Kuei arrived and first glanced coldly at Yi Guqin and the others, then walked directly to the gate of the sacred hall. The cold eyes under the bronze mask also revealed a trace of an unusual fluctuation. Open for me. Jin Kuei's aura burst forth as he raised the bronze pagoda in his hand. The entire bronze pagoda turned into a ray of green light and hit the gate of the sacred hall. Then, with a violent boom, the gate of the sacred hall was directly smashed open by the bronze pagoda. It actually opened. There was an uproar in the surroundings. Even Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and the other top heaven prides of the other dynasties looked serious. Jin Kuei's strength was indeed very frightening. However, Yi Guqin frowned slightly. Others might not have noticed, but Yi Guqin did. When the bronze pagoda hit the gate, it faintly released a wave of fluctuation. Rather than saying that the gate of the sacred hall was smashed open, it was more accurate to say that it was opened by the bronze pagoda. What methods does this Jinkui have, and who is he? Yiguchin could not understand, but he became even more vigilant. After the gate of the sacred hall opened, Jinkui was the first to rush in. Then, all the heaven prides of the four dynasties rushed in like a swarm of bees. Yiguchin and the others naturally did not want to fall behind and also rushed in. There was a path in the sacred hall that led straight to the deepest part. All the heaven prides were wholeheartedly flying towards the depths of the path. And the attentive Yiguchin was observing the walls on both sides of the path as his footsteps flashed. There were some murals on the walls. Among them, there was no lack of blurry figures with unparalleled majesty that were worshipped by thousands of people. Is that the saint of the ancient ruined celestial saint dynasty? Yiguchin muttered to himself. At that moment, Yiguchin suddenly saw one of the murals. A saint with a blurry and majestic face was sitting cross-legged on a pagoda. What concerned Yiguchin was, that saint only had 4 fingers on his left hand. He was missing a little finger. Chapter 1068. Yiguchin took a closer look and found that he was right. The saint depicted on the mural indeed had only 4 fingers on his left hand, and he was missing a little finger. In addition, he was sitting cross-legged on a pagoda. Yiguchin couldn't help but think of a person. Jinkui. But, how was this possible? Is it just a coincidence? Yiguchin felt a little incredulous. How could Jinkui have anything to do with the saint of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty? The two shouldn't have anything to do with each other. Yiguchin asked Su Qingyu in his heart. Senior Su, can a saint's primordial spirit be reincarnated? Su Qingyu's voice immediately sounded. It shouldn't be possible. At least, I've never seen the so-called reincarnation. Although a heavenly tribulation saint has great power and a long lifespan, he's not immortal. Even if his physical body is destroyed, his primordial spirit can still exist for a long time, but it can't exist forever. A heavenly tribulation saint was already an extraordinary existence and could survive without a physical body. But there were conditions. For example, Yingning could maintain her primordial spirit because of the immortal soul pearl. Su Qingyu could maintain his primordial spirit with the soul-storing coffin and the nourishment of Yiguchin's chaotic soul power. But if there were no conditions, even a saint's primordial spirit would slowly be exhausted over time. As for the reincarnation of the primordial spirit, it was too ridiculous. At least Su Qingyu hadn't seen it. Really? Yiguchin thought to himself. Was it really just a coincidence? Or Jinkui once got some opportunities of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty by chance, such as the Bronze Pagoda, Yiguchin thought. This was indeed a possibility. More importantly, Jinkui's identity. Kenpo had also said that Jinkui wasn't a member of the 5 fake saint families. Then what was his identity? Everything was a puzzle. Forget it. I'll take it one step at a time. Since we're already here, even if there's a mystery, it should be revealed soon. Yiguchin shook off his chaotic thoughts and focused on what was before him. The most important thing now was to explore the temple. The prodigies continued to venture deeper into the sacred palace. At this moment, the passage ahead suddenly opened up. It was an extremely vast space. Among them, there were densely packed dark golden statues. These dark golden statues were in the shape of humans and beasts. They filled the entire space. The entrance to the back of the temple was behind the group of dark golden statues. Looking at these dark golden statues that resembled terracotta soldiers, all the sky prides stopped in their tracks. Yiguchin's eyes flashed. These statues reminded him of the bronze night puppets in the great tomb of the ancient Chaos Wasteland. However, compared to those puppets, those dark golden statues gave off an even more oppressive feeling. Everyone, you've already come this far. Could it be that you still want to retreat? Jinkui said. We can charge forward together. As for whether we can make it through, it's up to fate, Hua Wuxiu said. Everyone present had reached a consensus. Then, everyone got up and charged forward. Just as the prodigies dashed out, the dark golden statues indeed began to move. Many ancient runes and patterns appeared on the surface of each statue, as if they were activating a spell. Swoosh! A dark golden statue wielding a giant sword slashed horizontally, directly slicing a prodigy in half. Blood splattered everywhere. The Honorable Realm. The strength of these statues is almost comparable to the Honorable Realm. Another prodigy exclaimed. Although these dark golden statues could not use true chi, their sturdy bodies and strength were almost comparable to the Honorable Realm. No, even soul attacks are useless this time. A prodigy exclaimed. Previously, when they were at the Longevity Ancient Tree, Yiguchen realized that soul attacks were very effective against the ancient corpses. Therefore, there were also prodigies who tried to use soul attacks, but to no avail. We can only force our way through. Yiguchen's face turned serious as he summoned the 9-dragon thunder prison. Poof! 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 Prodigies were constantly being killed around them. The prodigies were only a few hundred feet away from the entrance at the back of the sacred palace. Normally, they could reach it in a moment. But now, it had become a road of death. Even Sacred Cliff College's disciples had fallen. All disciples below the divine dwelling stage, leave quickly, Yiguchen shouted as he turned around. In such a situation, even the divine dwelling stage prodigies were in danger, let alone the heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigies. Hearing Yiguchen's words, some Sacred Cliff College disciples gritted their teeth, turned around, and retreated. Opportunities were indeed important, but life was more important. Even Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and the others did not move forward. Instead, they turned around and retreated. In the entire Sacred Cliff College, only Yiguchen, Ling Mo Shu, Ling Moyin, and Xuanlian continued to move forward. Tianxian College only had Mu Xingzu and Suki Miyazaki. Of course, the unaffiliated cultivator camp also had Jian Jinghong, Kenpo, Jian Shisan, and the others. The aristocratic family camp was more or less the same. The prodigies of the other 3 empires had either fallen or fled. Only a small number of top prodigies were able to make it through. Yiguchen used wave-like subtle steps, flashing between the numerous statues. He did not reveal his divine dwelling stage cultivation, but treated it as a trump card that could be revealed when necessary. Only then would it have an unexpected effect. In the end, Yiguchen and the others finally reached the back of the sacred palace. The dark golden statues seemed to have a range of movement that they could not escape from. Jiankuei and the others naturally rushed out. They did not stop at all and directly entered the entrance. Yiguchen was not willing to fall behind and continued to go deeper. After about a quarter of an hour, everyone finally reached the deepest part of the sacred palace. As soon as they entered, everyone's breathing seemed to stop. Inside the sacred palace, there was a giant triangular building that looked like a pyramid. And at the top of the pyramid, there were 7 figures sitting cross-legged. These 7 figures seemed to have died, and they were motionless. But their power was still not extinguished, as if they were sitting cross-legged at the top of all living beings, overlooking the changes in the clouds. The remains of heavenly tribulation saints. Without the slightest doubt, all the heaven prides present immediately came to this conclusion. Those 7 silhouettes were definitely saints of the heavenly tribulation. And the greatest opportunity in the sacred palace's treasure trove, the Saint Dao fruit, was very likely to exist in these 7 saint remains. Everyone's eyes turned red at the thought of the Saint Dao fruit. It was the crystal left behind by a saint. As long as they obtained it, even if they couldn't use it themselves, they could give it to the elders behind them or the empire behind them. The rewards they would receive would be immeasurable. Even an indifferent woman like Princess Luo Ho couldn't help breathing a little faster at this moment. If she could obtain a Saint Dao fruit for the Mo Luo Empire, it was possible to create a heavenly tribulation saint for the Mo Luo Empire. The eyes of the heaven prides of the various empires turned red. Chapter 1069. Even the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty felt the same, let alone the other 3 dynasties. The sage fruit was related to the position of the sword sun. Compared to the fortuitous opportunities he had plundered earlier, the sage Dao fruit was far more important. It could even be said that as long as one could obtain a sage fruit, that would almost guarantee that one could become the sword sun. A sage fruit and the position of sword sun. At this moment, none of the prodigies of the sword dynasty could hold themselves back. Go! All the prodigies rushed toward the pyramid at once. There was no modesty, no scruples, and no mercy. Everyone used all their strength to rush to the top of the pyramid. Just as they stepped into the pyramid, a transparent shockwave suddenly spread out. All the prodigies who stepped into the pyramid felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Their movements immediately slowed down as if they had stepped into a swamp. Damn it, this pyramid has a suppressive force. Some of the prodigies had ugly expressions. Fortunately, all the prodigies were suppressed at the same time. However, Jinkuei's lips curled into a sneer. The bronze pagoda in his hand shook. Similarly, a wave of energy spread out and dissipated part of the suppressive force of the transparent shockwave. His speed increased by a notch. What did Jinkuei do? We can't let him take the lead. Some of the prodigies roared. Jinkuei, you want the sage fruit? Dream on. Jian Jinghong shouted coldly as he pointed a finger between his eyebrows. The heavenly sword scar spread out a mysterious heavenly Dao intent, which also dissipated part of the suppressive force. With a flip of his hand, Jian Jinghong summoned his long sword and charged towards Jian Kuei. Jian Jinghong, don't be so arrogant. Jian 2, Jian 3, Jian 4, Jian 6, and the other sword sons of the aristocratic families also attacked at the same time. Don't be arrogant. Kenpo and the other sword sons of the itinerant cultivators also attacked at the same time. As the battle of the sword dynasty erupted, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. The geniuses of the four great dynasties immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. You hit me, I hit you. Those prodigies who had a grudge against each other took this opportunity to attack without mercy. The geniuses of the four great empires had been competing with each other for a long time and had accumulated a lot of grudges. Under the current circumstances, no one would allow others to seize the opportunity to obtain the Saint Dao fruit. Therefore, they could only fight and delay each other. Dugu Wubai, it's about time we put an end to this. A cold voice reached Yi Guchen's ears. Hua Wuxiu took out the luster dual swords with both hands, and his aura soared with determination. Before Yi Guchen came to the sword dynasty, Hua Wuxiu was one of the most famous geniuses in the sword dynasty. But Yi Guchen's appearance had shattered Hua Wuxiu's accumulated prestige time and time again. In the 5 academies competition, Hua Wuxiu lost to Yi Guchen. In the trip to the ancient sword tomb, Hua Wuxiu was still defeated by Yi Guchen. It could be said that Yi Guchen was like Hua Wuxiu's natural nemesis. In this situation, Hua Wuxiu naturally could not let Yi Guchen have a chance to obtain the Saint Dao fruit, so he also decided to end things with Yi Guchen. It just so happens that I have the same idea. Yi Guchen's lips curled into a calm smile. He had indeed been entangled with Hua Wuxiu for too long. Their opposing positions and camps, coupled with the enmity along the way, between him and Hua Wuxiu, there was no other outcome except to fight to the death. Like Hua Wuxiu, Yi Guchen would not allow Hua Wuxiu to obtain the Saint Dao fruit. So between the two, only one could survive. Looking at Yi Guchen's calm smile, Hua Wuxiu's lips curled into a cold smile and said, Dugu Wubai, if you think that you can rest easy after defeating me in the 5 academies competition, then you are too stupid. Hua Wuxiu mistakenly thought that the smile on Yi Guchen's face was because Yi Guchen had defeated him in the 5 academies competition. But little did he know that Yi Guchen was smiling because he had more hidden cards than Hua Wuxiu. Come on, Hua Wuxiu, although we are mortal enemies, you do have some achievements in swordsmanship. Yi Guchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison and suddenly drew his sword. Hua Wuxiu was able to integrate chess and swordsmanship, which was enough to show that he was talented. Coupled with the sacred body of light and darkness, he was indeed a rare genius in swordsmanship. But unfortunately, he was on the opposite side of Yi Guchen. On the other side, Shangguan Jingshan, Yin Ju, and the others were a little restless when they saw the battle between the two. They really wanted to attack Yiguchen again. At this time, Ling Mo Shu, Xuanlian, and the others blocked them and sneered, "What are you still thinking about? Your opponents are us." Xuanlian and the others blocked some hidden dangers for Yiguchen. At present, all the geniuses had their own opponents. Even Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao, and the others could not deal with Yiguchen for the time being. For a time, Hua Wuxiu and Yiguchen, the destined opponents, were not disturbed. "Come and fight." Hua Wuxiu was originally calm and elegant. But at this moment, he was full of fighting spirit. Holding the light and shadow swords in both hands, he flashed towards Yiguchen. He displayed the bright sword technique in his hands. Rampage, Yin Yang, Heaven's Essence, and Dragon Slaying. The four moves were used together. As the black and white sword chi moved, it was as if the void had turned into a chessboard. Hua Wuxiu loved to play chess since he was young. He integrated chess into swordsmanship. Now that he had mastered it, the power he displayed was even stronger than during the 5 Academies tournament. One could imagine that Hua Wuxiu was now using his full strength. Yiguchen was not idle either. He displayed the 3 ultimate holy swords one after another. 3 sword lights spread out and were randomly combined. Star and Moon Reversal, Star Sun Flowing Fire, Universe Extinction, and other ultimate moves were displayed one after another. Boom! Boom! The sound of continuous collisions resounded in all directions. The shock waves even surprised the people from the other empires. Yiguchen was still suppressing the aura of the divine dwelling stage and did not spread out. He was waiting for an opportunity. "Well, Dugu Wubai, the most important thing now is to fight for the Saint Dao fruit. I don't have the time to be entangled with you." Hua Wuxiu's body suddenly shook. He directly activated the sacred light and darkness body, transforming into the light form. His fluttering hair turned golden, and his whole person was like a god descending. Radiant Sword Domain. Hua Wuxiu once again brought out Komio Kendo's sword domain, the Radiant Sword Domain. In an instant, a dazzling light spread out from his body. Endless golden light swords soared into the sky. Tens of thousands of swords rushed towards Yiguchen. It was obvious that Hua Wuxiu didn't want to delay and wanted to get rid of Yiguchen quickly. 3 espers in 1, moon falling star sinking vast sun break. Yiguchen used so close, yet worlds apart to pull his body towards Hua Wuxiu. At the same time, he displayed the 3 espers in 1 sword move. Terrifying sword light accompanied by the stars, moon, and sun pierced into Hua Wuxiu's radiant sword domain. "It's useless, Dugu Wubai. Your power can't break my sword domain." Hua Wuxiu smiled calmly. The light form was originally based on power. Coupled with his divine dwelling stage cultivation, it wasn't something that Yiguchen, who was only at the spirit bridge stage, could break through. "Oh, is that so?" Looking at the confident Hua Wuxiu, Yiguchen sneered. He activated the divine dwelling in his body. In an instant, a powerful surge of vital chi spread out like a geyser. The power of Yiguchen's sword moved swords several times. "Unfortunately, I'm also at the divine dwelling stage." Yiguchen's words made the confident smile on Hua Wuxiu's face freeze. Not only him, but all the surrounding heaven prides were shocked when they heard these words. Chapter 1070. Yiguchen was at the divine dwelling stage. This news shocked everyone. In particular, the heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty were filled with unprecedented horror. How is this possible? How could Dugu Wubai break through to the divine dwelling stage so quickly? Shangguan Jingshan's face darkened, unwilling to believe it at all. Damn it, what kind of opportunity did he obtain? Yin Ju's heart trembled. Huh? Even Jiankui, who had always been as calm as a mountain, revealed a hint of surprise. Yiguchen breaking through to the divine dwelling stage was something no one present had expected. It should be said that Yiguchen was only at Tiandi Lingqiao in the 5 Academies tournament, but he was able to defeat Hua Wuxiu. And now, no one knew how strong Yiguchen had become after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. Brother Dugu really hid his strength well. Jian Jinghong and the others sighed in their hearts. Originally, the heaven prides of the unaffiliated cultivator camp did not have an advantage. But now, Yiguchen, who had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, had undoubtedly greatly increased the power of the unaffiliated cultivator camp. Rumble. After completely revealing the power of the divine dwelling stage, the power of Yiguchen's triple ultimate sword move had also increased by several times. If he was still at the spirit bridge stage, Yiguchen might not have been able to break through Hua Wuxiu's glorious sword domain. But now, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds. The glorious sword domain was directly torn in half by Yiguchen's sword move. Even Hua Wuxiu could not avoid it in time. He could only stack his two swords in front of him and forcibly resist Yiguchen's sword. Clang! Dazzling metal sparks burst out, accompanied by the sound of metal vibrating. Hua Wuxiu felt a terrifying force explode in front of him, causing him to retreat rapidly. His chest shook, and a metallic taste filled his mouth. Because he had misjudged Yiguchen's strength, Hua Wuxiu had suffered serious injuries. Yiguchen's battle instincts were extremely powerful. He grasped Hua Wuxiu's opening and continued to attack. Hua Wuxiu could be said to have taken one wrong step after another. He was directly suppressed by Yiguchen. The sky prides from the aristocratic family's camp were all shocked. Hua Wuxiu was completely suppressed by Yiguchen. This was something that no one had expected. Myriad God tribulation, heaven and earth annihilation. At this moment, Yiguchen was like a sword god who had descended to the mortal world. The vigorous sword chi turned into a pair of sword wings. Together with the destructive sword, it once again pierced towards Hua Wuxiu. Radiance Sword Realm, Holy Radiance Sword. Hua Wuxiu used his ultimate move. Within the Golden Sword Realm, Endless Light soared into the sky and turned into a giant golden sword that collided with Yiguchen's sword move. A loud boom sounded, as if the entire sacred palace was trembling. Amidst the shockwaves from the collision, the two of them retreated at the same time. However, it was obvious that Hua Wuxiu retreated more. Damn it! Hua Wuxiu's expression turned serious. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Yiguchen had not broken through to the next realm, so this sword move would definitely not be able to harm him. However, after breaking through, Yiguchen's strength had increased exponentially. Even Hua Wuxiu felt a sense of seriousness rise from the bottom of his heart. Hua Wuxiu, again. Compared to Hua Wuxiu, Yiguchen, who had broken through to the next realm, felt a sense of satisfaction. Previously, he had needed to use the sky-devouring secret skill to deal with Hua Wuxiu. Now, he did not seem to be such a big threat. Of course, Yiguchen would not make the mistake of underestimating his opponent. He immediately activated the Ancient God tactic. The Ancient God light runes on the surface of his body surged as he activated his Ancient God form. Hua Wuxiu's light form was the embodiment of strength. Yiguchen used his Ancient God form to deal with him. 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Fall of Life. Yiguchen once again gathered the vital energy in his spiritual abode and turned it into a terrifying sword move. In an instant, it was as if the heavens and earth were mourning, and the scene of the fall of life appeared. Radiance Sword Realm, 10,000 Swords Salvation. Hua Wuxiu activated his sword realm. 10,000 light swords rose into the air, turned around, and rushed toward Yiguchen. A sharp sword ray collided with the 10,000 swords of light, causing the sword chi in the void to explode in all directions with a loud rumble. Amidst the collision, Yiguchen used so close, yet worlds apart, and his figure almost instantly appeared in front of Hua Wuxiu. He pushed out his left hand, and the power of the Ancient God surged. Ancient Divine Royal Seal. A golden seal appeared, bringing with it a terrifying power that could suppress the heavens. It was the Ancient God clan's ultimate technique, the Ancient Divine Royal Seal. With Yiguchen's divine dwelling stage cultivation, the power of the Ancient Divine Royal Seal was incomparably powerful. Hua Wuxiu felt the surrounding air being compressed, as if a five-fingered mountain was pressing down on him. I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. I will not fail. Hua Wuxiu's expression was cold. He activated the sacred light and darkness body again, transforming into a dark form. His golden hair had turned pure black, and his eyes, which were overflowing with light, had also turned pitch black. Sword of the Dark Emperor. Hua Wuxiu swung out the shadow sword, adding the power of the dark sword Dao to it. A pitch-black sword light collided with the ancient divine royal seal, causing a huge wave of energy to burst forth. Hua Wuxiu suffered from the force of the impact, and his figure was blasted back, coughing up blood again. His figure, however, left behind a series of afterimages as he dodged the attack. On the other side, Yi Guqin's body was also shaken, but he was much better off than Hua Wuxiu. Hua Wuxiu, you are not the chess player. You are just a pathetic chess piece. Yi Guqin's expression was indifferent. No, it's impossible. Dugu Wubai, even if you have broken through, don't think you can defeat me. Hua Wuxiu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand, and a pitch-black light spread out from his body, turning into a pitch-black sword domain. It was the sword domain of the dark sword Dao, the eternal night sword domain. The eternal night sword domain once again enveloped Yi Guqin. It's useless. Yi Guqin shook his head slightly. Even in the 5 Academies tournament, Hua Wuxiu's eternal night sword domain could only cause him some trouble. Not to mention now that Yi Guqin had broken through, the suppression of the eternal night sword domain had weakened again. Oh, Dugu Wubai, do you think I used all my strength in the 5 Academies tournament? Hua Wuxiu sneered. Oh, so? Yi Guqin asked calmly. Aren't you curious about what kind of moves I created in the ancient sword tomb? Hua Wuxiu said confidently. I don't care what kind of swordsmanship you created. I only know that you will die today. Yi Guqin said coldly. Ha ha ha. Hua Wuxiu suddenly laughed, and his long black hair danced wildly. He had always been calm and indifferent, but at this moment, he was close to madness. His handsome face revealed a trace of coldness. I have said that I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. You have been in my calculations from the beginning to the end. Now, I will let you see my real trump card. Accompanied by Hua Wuxiu's cold shout. An incomparably powerful aura erupted from his body. The Radiant Sword Domain and the Eternal Night Sword Domain appeared at the same time. Could it be? Yi Guqin's expression suddenly froze. Chapter 1071. Hua Wuxiu's actions not only shocked Yi Guqin, but also shocked all the surrounding sky prides. What a powerful aura! What kind of move is Hua Wuxiu going to use? No wonder he's a famous sky pride of the Sword Dynasty. His strength is shocking. Hua Wuxiu's aura shocked everyone. At this moment, Hua Wuxiu's hair was a mess. Half of it had turned gold, while the other half had turned black. His entire body seemed to be bathed in light, while the other half was hidden in darkness. Hua Wuxiu had completely activated the power of the sacred light and darkness constitution. His aura surged in all directions, shocking everyone. As a 7th grade Sky Pride's innate ability, the sacred light and darkness constitution had finally revealed its true power and sharpness. Dugu Wubai, this trump card of mine is specially prepared for you. Hua Wuxiu held the sword of light in his left hand. The radiant sword realm shook the void, releasing endless light. With the sword of shadow in his right hand, the eternal night sword realm spread out like a dark and lonely universe. What is Hua Wuxiu doing? What kind of move does he have? The commotion caused by Hua Wuxiu was so great that some of the surrounding sky prides were secretly paying attention to it while fighting each other. As Hua Wuxiu's opponent, Yi Guqin's expression was even more serious. He sensed that Hua Wuxiu's move would probably bring him a surprise. I am light and I am darkness. Light and darkness combine, heaven and earth are in chaos. Hua Wuxiu's cold voice spread throughout the entire sacred hall. Then, to the shock of many sky prides, the Radiant Sword Realm and the Eternal Night Sword Realm actually slowly merged. How is this possible? Some sky prides even unconsciously stopped what they were doing, looking a little dazed. They had never seen or heard of a fusion of sword realms. Even Yiguchin's eyes suddenly focused, and his heart was slightly stirred. He couldn't be more familiar with this kind of sword domain fusion technique. Dugu Wubai, this is my trump card, Great Barrier of Light and Darkness. As Hua Wuxiu finished his sentence, the Radiant Sword Realm and the Eternal Night Sword Realm merged together and turned into a chaotic sword realm. This was Hua Wuxiu's ultimate trump card, the Great Boundary of Light and Darkness Concealment. With the appearance of this chaotic boundary, the space in the entire sacred temple seemed to tremble violently. The terrifying shockwave shook the surroundings, causing the geniuses to back off subconsciously. So powerful. What kind of move is this? He actually fused two sword domains. This is simply unheard of. The surrounding sky prides all gasped. Especially the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty. The Sword Dao Field was a sword cultivator's technique. Many of the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty were able to use the Sword Dao Field. However, they had never seen sword domain fusion before. I can't believe Hua Wuxiu still has such a trump card. Kenpo's face darkened. He began to worry about Yiguchin. Kenpo and the others were originally overjoyed when Yiguchin broke through to the divine dwelling stage. They believed that Yiguchin would definitely be able to suppress Hua Wuxiu. But now, after Hua Wuxiu brought out the Great Boundary of Light and Darkness Concealment, Kenpo wasn't so confident anymore. It wasn't just Kenpo. Jian Shi, Jian Jingheng, and the others were also frowning. Master. Mu Xingzu's eyes were filled with worry. Dugu Wubai. Ling Moyin bit her lip and began to worry about Yiguchin. It could be said that the unaffiliated cultivator camp's heaven prides were all on high alert at this moment. After all, Hua Wuxiu's trump card was really shocking. On the other side, Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Yiguchin, who had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, made them feel as if a boulder was pressing down on their hearts. If Hua Wuxiu died in Yiguchin's hands, it was obvious that Yin Zhu and the others would be the ones to die. But now, they didn't have such worries. Hua Wuxiu's move is too strong. I can't even muster up the strength to resist. It seems that Dugu Wubai will undoubtedly die this time. Yin Zhu thought. It wasn't only Yin Zhu and the others who thought so. After feeling the terror of Hua Wuxiu's move, many others also thought so. Jian Jingheng, it seems that another person from your unaffiliated cultivator camp is going to die, Jin Kuei said coldly. Oh, the outcome hasn't been decided yet. Who knows? Jian Jingheng also replied coldly. Princess Luohua, Li Rong, had always been cold. Yiguchin had killed the pink playboy in front of her, so she naturally didn't have a good impression of Yiguchin. But Yiguchin's strange move, which crushed the void inch by inch, made Princess Luohua extremely wary. She vaguely felt that Yiguchin wouldn't be defeated so easily. The surrounding heaven prides all had different thoughts. At this moment, Yiguchin had calmed down. No, I was wrong. Hua Wuxiu's move seems similar to the ultimate sword domain, but there are some differences, Yiguchin thought. Hua Wuxiu could fuse the Radiant Sword Domain and the Eternal Night Sword Domain because he had the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution. Hua Wuxiu used the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution as a bridge to fuse the two sword domains into one. But if Hua Wuxiu didn't have the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution, he definitely wouldn't be able to fuse the two sword domains into the Great Boundary of Light and Darkness. Moreover, Hua Wuxiu could only fuse the two sword domains. If it were other sword domains, he wouldn't be able to do it. Yiguchin's ultimate sword domain could fuse 2, 3, or even 4 sword domains. The two of them weren't on the same level at all. How could Hua Wuxiu's own move be qualified to be compared to the ultimate move of the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe? Of course, for ordinary people, being able to fuse the two sword domains was already a heaven-defying move. Even Yiguchin had to admit that Hua Wuxiu's talent in the Sword Dao was indeed astonishing. What's the matter, Dugu Wubai? Are you finally afraid now? Hua Wuxiu sneered at Yi Guqin when he saw that Yi Guqin wasn't moving. He thought that Yi Guqin was intimidated. I'm indeed a little surprised. But I'm not afraid, Yi Guqin said truthfully. Haha. Dugu Wubai, I have to say that you're really good at pretending. Since that's the case, let me tear off your disguise. Hua Wuxiu shook his head and smiled. He still thought that Yi Guqin was pretending to be calm. He didn't hesitate any longer and activated the sacred light and darkness constitution to the extreme. The great boundary of light and darkness concealment pressed down on Yi Guqin in an unparalleled manner. Let's test the power of this boundary first. Yi Guqin thought to himself and used the universal extermination. Powerful sword qi gushed out and slashed at the great boundary of light and darkness. However, the next moment, to everyone's surprise, the powerful sword qi was like a clay ox entering the sea. It didn't cause a single ripple. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows slightly. The universal extermination was already considered a very powerful move, second only to the 3 ultimate techniques in one. However, it couldn't even shake the boundary. Haha, a trump card that can be easily broken is not called a trump card. Dugu Wubai, surrender. Hua Wuxiu's aura shook the sky. The great boundary of light and darkness rumbled and shook as it suppressed Yi Guqin. The next moment, Yi Guqin's figure was directly suppressed by the great boundary of light and darkness. It's over. At this moment, everyone around thought at the same time. Yi Guqin was actually defeated by Hua Wuxiu's trump card in an instant. Chapter 1072. No one thought that Yi Guqin would be able to survive such an attack. The power of the great boundary of light and darkness was too terrifying. The power of the fusion of the 2 sword domains was too strong. Even Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao, and the other top prodigies felt their scalps tingle. Princess Luo Ho thought that if she were in Yi Guqin's situation, she would have no other choice but to unseal the power of her Luo Ho life providence. After all, this powerful move was made by Hua Wuxiu's sacred light and darkness constitution combined with the power of the 2 sword domains. It was impossible for it not to be powerful. It's over. Seeing Yi Guqin's figure submerged in the boundary, Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They all smiled with relief. Master! Mu Xingzu cried out. Her aura burst forth, and an unparalleled soul power fluctuation spread out. She wanted to rush to Yi Guqin's side, but she was stopped by the prodigies of the aristocratic families. No, it can't be. He won't die. Ling Moyin's face was pale at the moment. She refused to believe that Yi Guqin, who had created miracles, would die just like that. Just as all the prodigies were secretly paying attention. The smile on Hua Wuxiu's face slowly faded. The reason for that was because he could faintly sense a resisting pressure coming from the spirit formation. What's going on? Hua Wuxiu frowned. He was naturally extremely confident in this trump card of his. It was definitely a powerful weapon. Logically speaking, it should be more than enough to kill Yi Guqin. But now, Hua Wuxiu could feel the resistance within the enchantment. Clearly, it meant that Yi Guqin was not completely dead yet. Hua Wuxiu's expression also fell into the eyes of the others. He's not dead. Brother Dugu is not dead. Ling Emoshu's eyes flashed with excitement. Mu Xingzu, Ling Moyin, and Suki Miyazaki also suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. The great boundary of light and darkness embryonic concealment rumbled as waves of blood-colored sword qi spread out. That's the Azura Sword Dao's sword domain. A prodigy was shocked. Boom! An 18-layer blood prison rose from the blood sea, resisting the suppression of the Great Barrier. In a sea of Azura blood, Yi Guqin's expression was cold, like the Azura in the sword. Yi Guqin was not dead. This scene made all the prodigies of the prodigies were shocked. He's not dead. The faces of Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the others stiffened. Hua Wuxiu, you want to kill me? You're still not strong enough. A line of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Guqin's mouth. Overall, it was not a big problem. He also used this opportunity to measure the power of Hua Wuxiu's move. It was indeed very strong, but it was not a fatal threat to him. You're just making a last-ditch effort. Hua Wuxiu snorted and activated the power of his sacred light and darkness constitution to the extreme. Rumble. The great boundary of light and darkness prodigy was like a chaotic millstone that rolled out again. Even Yi Guqin's 18-level Azura blood sea showed signs of collapsing. A sword domain obviously could not compare to a boundary of light and darkness. As expected, he can't resist it. Seeing the Azura sword domain being defeated, the surrounding prodigies shook their heads. They did not think that Yi Guqin could win. Even if Yi Guqin could use another sword domain, he would definitely not be able to resist the power of the great boundary of light and darkness. Hua Wuxiu, you didn't use your full strength, but why do you think I used my full strength in the 5 Academies tournament? The next trump card is also prepared for you. Yi Guqin laughed heartily. The genuine qi in his divine dwellings surged out, and a terrifying sword essence began to spread. As the sword essence spread, the surrounding void seemed to be filled with countless thunder and lightning sparks. Is Dugu Wubai going to use his sword principle again? But it shouldn't be of any use, right? No, this sword principle doesn't seem to be the one that Dugu Wubai used before. Some prodigies' expressions changed immediately after sensing Yi Guqin's sword principle. Almost all the prodigies present knew that Yi Guqin had 3 different sword principles and could be said to be an amazing talent. But now, Yi Guqin's sword principle was different from the sword principle he had used before. Could it be that Dugu Wubai has comprehended a new sword principle? Thinking of this, Shangguan Jingxian and Yin Zhu looked at each other and saw a trace of horror in each other's eyes. Thunder sword principle, Heaven's punishment thunder prison. Yi Guqin shouted coldly. A powerful sword light turned into a ball of lightning and soared into the sky. Countless thunderbolts spread out from the lightning, as if the surrounding void had turned into a thunder-forbidden domain. At this moment, Yi Guqin finally displayed the 4th sword principle that he had comprehended, the thunder sword principle. That's the thunder sword principle. Oh my god, when did Dugu Wubai comprehend the thunder sword principle? With 4 supreme sword Daos, is he still human? Monster, he's definitely a monster. No wonder he's called a natural saint. As Yi Guqin displayed the thunder sword principle, the surroundings seemed to be in an uproar. All the sky prides were stunned. Especially some of the prodigies from the sword dynasty. Because they were sword cultivators, they knew how difficult it was to comprehend a sword principle. It was difficult for others to comprehend a sword principle. But now, Yi Guqin had displayed a total of 4 sword principles. Thunder sword principle, how could you possibly comprehend a 4th sword principle? Even Hua Wuxiu's expression changed. He was shocked and surprised. The thunder sword principle was considered a superior sword principle even among the sword principles. Its attack power was extremely strong. Nothing is impossible for me, Dugu Wubai. Yi Guqin's vigorous vital energy in his spiritual abode was injected into the 9-dragon thunder prison. In an instant, it was accompanied by a series of dragon roars. The souls of the thunder dragons appeared one by one. In the end, a total of 6 souls appeared, filling the area with destructive lightning. 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique, extreme lightning. Yi Guqin raised his sword. In the void, a Jin hexagram with flashing lightning condensed. The tip of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword touched the Jin hexagram. In an instant, the entire sword was filled with endless destructive lightning. Yi Guqin activated the power of the 9-colored dark thunder again and added it to this move. Hua Wuxiu, who said that no one can break your enchantment? Yi Guqin's powerful move swept towards the great enchantment of light and darkness. The power of the thunder sword principal realm. The power of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. The extreme lightning of the 8 extremities reincarnation sword technique. And the powerful 9-colored dark thunder. The 4 powers superimposed together. The power was like a heavenly punishment, sweeping across the surrounding area. As the sword swept out, the glaring lightning caused the entire sacred hall to be engulfed in endless light. The terrifying sound of thunder could be heard in the void. It was as if 100 stars had exploded at the same time. The power of this move made all the prodigies feel a chill down their spines. It was as if they were on the verge of death. Rumble. A strong shockwave swept across the entire sacred hall. If not for the suppression of the pyramid, the shockwave alone would have destroyed the entire sacred hall. All the prodigies dodged and opened their eyes with difficulty. What was the outcome of this clash of extreme moves? Chapter 1073. One of them was a renowned 7th-grade prodigy from the Sword Dynasty. He possessed the sacred light and darkness constitution and had created the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier, Hua Wuxiu. The other was a prodigy who had comprehended the 4 supreme sword Daos and was a natural saint who had created miracles time and time again, Yi Guqin. Both of them were giants among men, and no prodigy dared to underestimate them. At this moment, Hua Wuxiu and Yi Guqin's ultimate moves collided, setting off earth-shattering shockwaves that caused the surroundings to tremble. Everyone wanted to know what the final outcome would be. As the light weakened, everyone saw Yi Guqin's powerful thunderous sword strike ruthlessly piercing into the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier. The entire chaotic barrier was filled with lightning, which swept across the entire area. Cracks began to spread across the barrier. Hua Wuxiu's barrier is about to be broken. Seeing this, some prodigies couldn't help but exclaim. Hua Wuxiu's self-created ultimate move was ultimately no match for Yi Guqin's 4-layered attack. Damn it! Shangguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. If Hua Wuxiu died, it would be their turn next. No, impossible, absolutely impossible. I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. I will not lose. Hua Wuxiu's hair was in a mess, and his usually calm and handsome face was slightly distorted at this moment. He didn't believe that he would lose. He didn't believe that Yi Guqin would be able to break his ultimate move. I, Hua Wuxiu, will not lose. Hua Wuxiu roared and slapped his chest with one hand. Then, he spat out a large mouthful of essence blood, which landed on the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier. The barrier, which was already full of cracks, immediately healed. Not only that, the great boundary of light and darkness was still expanding vaguely. Again. Hua Wuxiu's expression revealed a hint of madness. At this moment, he was ready to risk everything. His only obsession was to kill Yi Guqin with his own hands. No matter what the price was. Then, Hua Wuxiu once again forced out the essence blood from his heart, and at the same time completely squeezed out the power of the light and darkness sacred body. Under Hua Wuxiu's relentless support, the great boundary of light and darkness embryonic embodiment expanded at an extremely terrifying speed, becoming even more powerful. That Hua Wuxiu is crazy. Seeing Hua Wuxiu's actions, the surrounding geniuses immediately backed off. If they didn't retreat, they might even be implicated. On the other side, Yi Guqin's figure was finally forced back. His sword had originally almost broken the barrier, but in the end, Hua Wuxiu had risked his life to save him. Dugu Wubai, you are the first person to put me in such a difficult position. Therefore, your ending is to be killed by me with my own hands. Next, I will risk my life to kill you. Hua Wuxiu's skin cracked all over, and blood spurted out. Obviously, at this point, he was somewhat unable to control the power of the great boundary of light and darkness. Therefore, he had to take advantage of the last opportunity to kill Yi Guqin. Endless light and darkness, harmonization of heaven and earth. Hua Wuxiu used the last of his strength to perform his ultimate move. The entire great boundary of light and darkness turned into a chaotic chessboard. On the chessboard, every black and white chess piece was a ball of sharp sword qi. Finally, on the chessboard, the chess pieces gathered together, as if to make light and darkness chaotic again. This was Hua Wuxiu's ultimate move, endless light and darkness, harmonization of heaven and earth. Kill. The chaotic chessboard completely suppressed Yi Guqin. Hua Wuxiu's ultimate move, even Jiankui, who had always been high and mighty, revealed a look of surprise. Obviously, the power of Hua Wuxiu's move had exceeded his expectations. Is he still not going to die this time? Shangguan Jingshen and the others stared at Yiguchen. Rumble, Yiguchen's expression was very calm as he felt the destructive chessboard coming down on him. It's time to test the power of that move, Yiguchen muttered to himself. He controlled the Azura Sword Principal's sword territory and slowly superimposed it with the Lightning Sword Principal's sword territory. The move Yiguchen wanted to perform was one of his strongest trump cards, the ultimate sword territory. Previously, he had only superimposed the two sword territories slightly to scare off Princess Luo Ho and kill Pink Playboy in one move. At this moment, Yiguchen performed the move again, but this time, it was not the same as before. Instead, he had completely superimposed the power of the two sword domains together. Azura Sword Principal, Azura Blood C18 levels. Lightning Sword Principal, Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yiguchen raised both his hands as if he was controlling the power of the two sword territories. Finally, he completely fused them together. Ultimate Sword Territory, the fusion of the two sword territories. Boom! At the moment of the fusion, an incomparably powerful and terrifying pressure swept across the void. The surrounding sky prides who were slightly closer to Yiguchen spat out blood and were sent flying. Princess Luo Ho revealed a look of shock under her mask. This move again. She had forgotten that when Yiguchen had performed this move previously, she had felt an extreme sense of danger. And now, the same sense of danger had appeared again. The power of the two sword territories was like two millstones superimposed on each other, crushing the void inch by inch. The power that it exuded was terrifying. What kind of move is that? Dugu Wubai can also fuse the two sword territories. Yiguchen's move made everyone turn pale with fright. Hua Wuxiu almost stopped breathing. He had gone through countless cultivation, deductions, and painstaking efforts before he could fuse the two sword territories. As for Yiguchen, he was able to merge the two sword realms. Moreover, it was the Azura Sword Principal and the Lightning Sword Principal, which had completely different attributes. Kaboom! The power of the ultimate sword territory collided with the chaos chessboard. An indescribably powerful fluctuation erupted, and the ripples swept across the void like a ferocious wolf. Under the powerful impact, Hua Wuxiu and Yiguchen both spat out blood and were sent flying. Under everyone's gaze, the ultimate sword territory viciously tore the chaos chessboard apart. The moment the chaos chessboard was torn apart, Hua Wuxiu spat out another mouthful of blood. His aura had also become extremely weak. The sword territory fusion technique that he had created could not be compared to the ultimate sword territory of the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe. The top genius of the Hua family had finally been defeated by Yiguchen. Defeated. Hua Wuxiu has been defeated. Shangguan Jingshen and the other geniuses from the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe looked pale as they stammered. They could imagine that after Hua Wuxiu, they would be next. No, how can this be? How can I be defeated? Hua Wuxiu's mouth was full of blood, and even his hair was stained with blood. He was on the verge of madness, and he could not believe it. Hua Wuxiu, it's over. Yiguchen also spat out a mouthful of blood, but his situation was obviously much better than Hua Wuxiu's. His expression was cold, and there was no mercy at all. Between him and Hua Wuxiu, one of them was destined to die. Without hesitation, Yiguchen held the 9-dragon thunder prison and stabbed at Hua Wuxiu. Damn it! Are you still not going to attack? Hua Wuxiu's expression was cold, and his eyes were bloodshot as he roared. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice rang out. There was a piercing sound. It was the sound of the sword piercing through flesh. Yiguchen turned around and was shocked. It's really you. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows coldly. Chapter 1074. Yiguchen looked over. A blood-red blade pierced through Jian Shi's chest. Fresh blood dripped down from the tip of the sword. How could this be? Jian Shi was stunned. After a few breaths of time, the tearing sensation from her chest rushed to her brain. Jian Shi. Kenpo and the other sword sons of itinerant cultivators suddenly changed their expressions and let out an angry roar. How could I? Jian Shi spat out blood. She turned her head with difficulty and saw the familiar grimace mask. Little 13, why, Jian Shi's delicate body trembled. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. No matter how much he calculated, no matter how much he thought. She didn't expect that the most unlikely person would attack her. Sorry, I had to do this. Jian Shisan's voice was very cold, very deep, and very hoarse. All the prodigies present were stunned. Especially the prodigies on the itinerant cultivator's side. Su Anlian, Ling Mo Shu, Ling Moin, Mu Xingzu, Suki Miyazaki, and the others. Their expressions were frozen, and they were in disbelief. The strongest sword son of the itinerant cultivator's side was known to be in existence that could compete with Jiankui. At this moment, he actually attacked his own people. Jian Shisan, you deserve to die. Kenpo flew into a rage and completely lost his composure. This was what it meant to be too smart for one's own good. This was, because Kenpo figured that if Jian Shisan was a spy, he wouldn't be so stupid as to use his fatal 13 swords to kill Sword 10. But Jian Shisan just had to do so. On the contrary, Kenpo and the others didn't open their mouths to question Jian Shisan because they were worried that the other party was trying to sow discord. But who would have thought that Jian Shisan just had to be a spy? He used his signature fatal 13 swords to kill Sword 10 in an open and above-board manner. Kenpo and the others didn't dare to suspect him too much. Jian Shi even defended Jian Shisan, thinking that he was framed by the prodigies on the aristocratic family's side. And now, when Hua Wuxiu was defeated, Jian Shisan finally couldn't hide his identity as a spy. I just want to know, why? Blood kept gushing out of Jian Shi's mouth. In her heart, she admired Jian Shisan. She also knew that Jian Shisan was a lonely person and never got close to other sword sons. But even so, she still trusted Jian. It was precisely because of this that she would work so hard to defend Sword 13 when Sword 10 died. And now, Sword 11 felt that his life was gradually slipping away. I'm sorry, I don't have a choice. Jian Shisan's sword hand was trembling slightly. How could he not know Jian Shi's admiration for him? But Jian Shisan didn't have a choice. Splat! Jian Shisan pulled out the bloodbath sword. Blood splattered everywhere. Jian Shi's figure fell like a butterfly with broken wings. Damn it, Jian Shisan, do you know how much she likes you? Kenpo roared, his aura bursting forth. He hated Jian Shisan's betrayal. Jian Shisan was silent. Holding the bloodbath sword, he charged toward Yi Guqin. Ha, Dugu Wubai, I've said it before. I'm the chess player. You're all just chess pieces. How can a chess piece win against a chess player? Hua Wuxiu laughed maniacally. Jian Shisan was one of the hopes of the itinerant cultivator camp. But now, this hope had turned into desperation. Following Jian Shisan's betrayal, Jian Shi's death. The power of all the sword sons in the itinerant cultivator camp was severely weakened. No matter who wins or loses, I only know that you're going to die. Yi Guqin's expression was also very cold. He activated the power of the dual sword realm and charged toward the heavily injured Hua Wuxiu. Jian Shisan, why aren't you saving me? Do you want her to die? Hua Wuxiu shouted and retreated at the same time. Everyone had a survival instinct. Hua Wuxiu was no exception. He also wanted to live. He didn't want to be killed by Yi Guqin. Hearing Hua Wuxiu's words, Jian Shisan's body suddenly shook. He used his other hand to touch the ghost mask on his face. His eyes were filled with determination. Fatal 13 swords, fourth sword. A streak of blood-red sword chi, with an indomitable evil spirit, locked onto Yi Guqin's back. As the strongest sword son of the itinerant cultivator camp, Jian Shisan's strength was unquestionable. Even Yiguchen felt an extreme sense of danger. He gritted his teeth and his expression was cold. Immovable king armor of the ancient god. Yiguchen's body was overflowing with golden light. In the end, it condensed into a golden armor. Yiguchen was going to take Jian Shisan's sword head-on. Damn it! Seeing Yiguchen's actions, Hua Wuxiu's expression changed. Whether Jian Shisan could hurt Yiguchen or not, he would definitely die. Jiankui, save me. Hua Wuxiu found it difficult to speak, but at this critical moment, he had no choice but to speak. Trash. Not far away, Jiankui's expression was cold. While fighting Jian Jinghong, he rushed toward the top of the pyramid. He had no intention of helping Hua Wuxiu. No. Rumble. The two sword Dao domains were like millstones grinding against each other, crushing the void. It was not something that Hua Wuxiu, who was severely injured, could withstand. Hua Wuxiu's body crumbled inch by inch, turning into blood and dust. The pain of his body being crushed drowned out Hua Wuxiu's senses. His face was distorted. Finally, he let out an angry roar. Dugu Wubai, you will die. Not only you, but everyone in the itinerant cultivator camp, including Yitianqing, will die. After finishing his last sentence, Hua Wuxiu's entire body exploded into a rain of blood. Hua Wuxiu, the famous 7th grade prodigy who ranked 3rd on the Sword Dynasty, had completely fallen. But his last sentence before his death made Yiguchen frown. Did that mean that Yitianqing would also fall? However, before Yiguchen could think about it, a sharp pain came from his back. Although the immovable king armor of the ancient god had offset most of the power of Jian Shisan's move. But there was still a small amount of sword qi that pierced through Yiguchen's back, causing him to cough up blood. Dead? Jian Shisan's expression was a little ugly. Hua Wuxiu's death made him have a bad feeling. Would she be okay? Jian Shisan, although I don't know why you betrayed the itinerant cultivator camp, you will not succeed. Yiguchen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his expression cold. Jian Shisan slowly shook his head. Since it was already too late, there was no room for negotiation. Just as Jian Shisan was about to continue attacking Yiguchen. However, Saber 9 had interfered. Brother Dugu, go fight for the Saint Dao fruit. We will hold him back here. Kenpo shouted. Okay. Yiguchen did not hesitate. He turned around and flashed away. Right now, the Saint Dao fruit was the most important thing. Once they obtained the Saint Dao fruit, they could immediately retreat. Yiguchen immediately used the Gravity Sword Realm. The entire Gravity Sword Realm seemed to offset the suppression of the pyramid. Yiguchen's speed also skyrocketed as he rushed toward the saint's corpse at the top of the pyramid. Chapter 1075. Wishful Thinking. Seeing Yiguchen climbing the pyramid at full speed, Jiankui's voice was cold. The bronze pagoda in his hand shook, and he broke free from Jian Jinghong's restraint and followed closely behind. Don't even think about it. Jian Jinghong also followed in a flash. In addition, Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao, Zhao Xiaodi, and the others also used their own methods and followed closely behind. The rest of the people were fighting as they approached the top of the pyramid. Although Kenpo's strength was inferior to Jian Shisan's, he could still delay them. In addition, Jian Wu, 7th swordsman, Xuanlian, Ling Mo Shu, and the others were also entangled with Jian Er, Jian San, and the other geniuses of the aristocratic families. We're almost there. Yiguchen used the gravity sword domain to counteract the suppression of the pyramid. Therefore, he was the fastest to reach the top of the pyramid. Even Yiguchen could vaguely feel the waves of suppressive aura coming from the saint corpses. Even if a heavenly tribulation saint had died, their corpses still had supreme suppressive aura. Yiguchen, be careful. I keep feeling that there's something strange about this place. Su Qingyu's voice suddenly sounded in Yiguchen's mind. Yes, indeed. Yiguchen nodded secretly. With his keen divine soul perception, he could also feel that there was a strange soul power fluctuation in this temple. That fluctuation made Yiguchin instinctively feel repulsed. That corpse. Yiguchin's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he saw that among the 7 saint corpses at the top of the pyramid, one of the corpses was dragging a compass-like object in its hand, which seemed to be engraved with array patterns. But what caught Yiguchin's attention the most was the saint corpse that was dragging the compass-like object. It only had 4 fingers on its left hand, and it was missing its little finger. It was the same as what he saw on the murals in the temple. Not only that, it was the same as Jinkuei's. Yiguchin sensed something and turned to look at Jinkuei, who was chasing after him. Through the mask, Yiguchin seemed to be able to sense Jinkuei's excitement. I absolutely can't let him get that compass. Yiguchin thought to himself. He didn't know why, but he instinctively had this thought. He must not let Jinkuei get that compass. Ha, I'm finally going to succeed. Jinkuei couldn't contain his excitement. His long-term plan was finally going to succeed. As long as he obtained that compass, Jinkuei would obtain unparalleled benefits. He would also become the strongest in a single leap, and might even lead the Sword Dynasty in the future. Therefore, Jinkuei must obtain that compass. However, just as Yiguchin was about to approach the corpse of the saint who was holding the compass in his hand, Yiguchin suddenly stopped. However, a thunderous sword radiance pierced through the air and blocked his path. No, defeat. Jinkuei spat out each word in anger. Jinkuei, didn't you boast that you would kill me? Yiguchin clenched the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand as he faced off against Jinkuei. Compared to Hua Wuxiu, Jinkuei was clearly a more dangerous character. The main reason was that his identity was a mystery, and he seemed to have some connection with the Void Sky Sacred Dynasty. Since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Jinkuei roared coldly, and the terrifying aura of the 5th heaven of the divine dwelling spread out, sweeping across the entire place like a storm. What a powerful aura! Is that the true strength of Jinkuei from the Sword Dynasty? When Jinkuei revealed the aura of the 5th heaven of the divine dwelling, all the heaven prides sucked in a breath of air, their eyes filled with incomparable horror. In the divine dwelling stage, every step was a different heaven. With each heaven, the density of one's chi would double, and of course, it would be more difficult to break through. Jinkuei's strength of the 5th heaven of the divine dwelling stage was almost the strongest here. Even Princess Luo Ho and other top heaven prides would be at a disadvantage against Jinkuei if they didn't use their trump cards. 5th heaven of the divine dwelling stage. Even Yiguchin's expression turned grave. Jinkuei's strength was indeed a little beyond his expectations. If he was a little stronger, he would almost be on par with Dihaoyan. The situation isn't good. The heaven prides of the unaffiliated cultivator camp suddenly changed their expressions. Even the heaven prides of the other dynasties had ugly expressions. The stronger Jinkuei was, the lower their chances of snatching the Saint Dao fruit. 100 rivers converge. Jinkuei raised the bronze pagoda, and 100 flying swords shot out from the pagoda. They gathered in the void and transformed into a magnificent torrent of swords that rushed toward Yiguchin. Universe annihilation. Yiguchin also used this move and clashed with Jinkuei. Boom! However, after the attack, Yiguchin only felt that the fierce and vigorous torrent of swords seemed to be invincible. It directly blasted his body back and he coughed out blood. Ancient God form, ancient God immovable king armor. Yiguchin once again transformed into his ancient God form, and at the same time, the ancient God immovable king armor formed on the surface of his body to increase his strength and defense. It's useless. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. The swords that can't be used by me can only be broken. Jinkuei's voice was cold. 100 flying swords once again streaked across the void and rushed toward Yiguchin. It's too early to say this now. Yiguchin's expression was cold. Although Jinkuei gave him a lot of pressure, Yiguchin was not a pushover either. He was the kind of person who would become stronger when faced with a strong opponent. Triple ultimate fusion, moon falling star sinking great sun break. Yiguchin swung his sword, and 3 sword rays streaked across the void and merged into one. With one strike, the moon and stars exploded, and the great sun fell. The power of the strike was extremely powerful. Boom! Yiguchin's sword move broke through the torrent of flying swords. Jiankui snorted coldly, and the bronze pagoda in his hand rose into the air, suspended in the void, and rotated on its own. 1,000 flying swords. As soon as Jiankui finished speaking, endless clanging sounds of metal rang out. Densely packed flying swords surged out of the bronze pagoda. 1,000 flying swords soared into the air, forming a huge sword ring that charged toward Yiguchin. Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yiguchin activated his lightning sword Dao domain. Endless sword rays transformed into lightning and spread out, colliding fiercely with Jiankui's attack. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Art, Extreme Lightning. Yiguchin once again used his strongest move, and the trigram runes formed in the void. Yiguchin's sword pierced through the runes, and the surging power of lightning burst out of the sword, sweeping toward Jiankui. This move is only a so-so. The sword chief's expression was incomparably calm. The bronze pagoda above his head vibrated, and flying swords surged out again. 10,000 streams returned to one. Jiankui stretched out his hand, using his fingers as a sword, and pointed directly at Yiguchin. 10,000 flying swords surged and gathered in the void. Sword chi cut in all directions, causing the entire sacred hall to rumble and tremble. Rumble. The 10,000 flying swords rushed toward Yiguchin in unison. The formation was shocking. Facing Jiankui's ultimate move, Yiguchin no longer held back. Azura Blood C18 levels. Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. The 2 sword Dao domains were once again merged by Yiguchin. The power of the dual sword domains crushed the void, releasing endless destructive sword chi. This move caused even the sword chieftain's expression to become a little more serious. The 2 ultimate moves were about to collide. And at this critical moment, an arrogant and heroic laughter suddenly broke through the air. Ha, interesting. I didn't expect to see such a battle here. You didn't disappoint me. Accompanied by this arrogant remark, a purple-haired, vigorous figure stepped through the void and arrived. Chapter 1076. It was the figure that stepped through the air. His purple hair fluttered in the wind, and he wore a mysterious purple mask. He did not deliberately reveal his aura, but he gave off a sense of superiority, as if a heavenly sovereign had descended and was looking down on all the prodigies. It was the mysterious number 1 prodigy on the sword leaderboard, Z. Under the mask, Z was watching the battle between Jiankui and Yiguchin with great interest. The 2's ultimate moves collided in the air, and boundless sword chi rippled out. The prodigies around them were all sent flying. However, Z was not more interested in the stronger Jiankui, but Yiguchin. That sword domain fusion technique. Z was surprised. He was born noble and had an extraordinary background. Naturally, his knowledge was not limited to the sword dynasty. Others might not know what Yiguchin's sword domain fusion technique was. However, Z had seen it before. However, he was not too sure. This sword domain fusion technique was extremely precious. Even the faction he belonged to did not have it. It was even more impossible for ordinary people to obtain it. Why does Duga Wubai have such a technique? Is it similar, or did it really originate from that place? Z wondered. He had come this time to obtain the fruit of the sage Dao. However, Z had discovered something more important than the fruit of the sage Dao. It was Yiguchin's ultimate sword domain. Even Z, who had an extraordinary background, was slightly envious of such a technique. If I can obtain this person's sword domain fusion technique, perhaps I won't have to live under Di Haotian's shadow, Z muttered. Just as Z arrived, Jiankui and Yiguchin stopped fighting. The prodigies from the other dynasties also looked at Z in surprise. Is that the mysterious number 1 prodigy on the sword dynasty's sword leaderboard, purple? Who is he? His aura is so powerful. It's frightening. The surrounding prodigies were all on guard. Although Violet did not take the initiative to reveal his cultivation aura, the pressure he gave off was not any weaker than Jiankuei. Damn it, someone is here to cause trouble again. Jiankuei's eyes darkened under his mask. One Yiguchin was enough to annoy him. Who would have thought that another variable would appear at this moment? Moreover, even with the sword leader's strength, he still felt an extreme threat from Zi's body. Although Violet was ranked first on the sword ranking, her strength was still fundamentally different from Jian Jinghong, Hua Wuxiu, and the others. Ha, the battle between geniuses is truly delightful. I also want the sage fruit. Zi laughed boldly, incomparably domineering. There are many people who want this Saint Dao fruit. You are one more. Jiankuei's tone was cold. Zi's gaze suddenly turned to Yiguchin. You are Dugu Wubai, the natural-born saint. I have heard of you for a long time. Today, I see that you are indeed somewhat capable. Yiguchin frowned when he heard Zi's words turn to him. He did not think that Zi was a kind person. Moreover, Yiguchin also felt that Zi's gaze under the mask was scrutinizing him. It felt as if Zi was staring at a treasure. I will cut to the chase. If you give me the sword domain fusion technique, I may help you deal with the enemy if I am in a good mood. I can also give you 1 or 2 sage fruit, Zi said arrogantly. The meaning of his words was as if the sage fruit was already in his bag. Yiguchin's face darkened when he heard Zi's words. The ultimate sword domain was a technique of the Sky Mountain Sword tribe. It was also Yiguchin's most important trump card. He naturally would not give it to anyone. As for the so-called help, Zi's original words were that he might help if he was in a good mood. But it was also possible that he would not help if he was in a bad mood. This was equivalent to asking Yiguchin to give him the ultimate sword domain without risking anything. How could there be such a good deal in the world? Before Yiguchin could reply, a cold snort was heard. Although you are the first on the Sword Dynasty's sword ranking, you are not the only one who has the final say here. The person who spoke was Mo Guangdao, the 5th on the sword ranking of the Tyrant Saber Dynasty. Mo Guangdao had previously clashed with Yiguchin because of the gold and silver twin sabers. Mo Guangdao was also an arrogant person, so he naturally could not hold himself back when Zi spoke so arrogantly. So you think that I am not qualified to say such words? Zi asked in an inexplicable tone. Of course, Mo Guangdao said coldly. Very well. Zi nodded slightly. In the next moment, Zi suddenly stretched out his palm. A terrifying wave of qi as deep as the sea erupted like a volcano and swept across the surroundings. 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm. Purple's sudden attack caused the surrounding paragons to tremble in fear. How is this possible? Mo Guangdao's expression changed wildly, the disdain on his face instantly replaced by shock. Great sky-shattering handprint. Zi, who had erupted with the aura of the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm, grabbed at Mo Guangdao with one hand. True qi tumbled in the void, condensing into a huge handprint that seemed to be able to crush the void. Damn it, Heavenly Tiger Golden Shattering Blade. Mo Guangdao's eyes were blood-red. With a roar, he swept out a blade aura, trying his best to resist the great sky-shattering handprint. But he was still beaten to the point of vomiting blood inch by inch. He was seriously injured in an instant. Zi snorted coldly, stepped into the void, and took 9 steps in a row. 9-step Divine King Stomp. Zi's figure descended above Mo Guangdao's head in an instant. He stomped down fiercely, causing the void to tremble. Mo Guangdao, from his head to his body, exploded into a cloud of broken bones and blood. With one stomp, the 5th on the sword ranking of the Tyrant Saber Dynasty was trampled to death. Everyone was aghast. Everyone was terrified. All the Heaven Prides were shocked. Their eyes were wide open, as if they had seen something impossible happen in front of their eyes. 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm. Trampled Mo Guangdao to death with one stomp. All of this sent chills down the spines of all the sky prides present. Their gazes towards purple were filled with unprecedented fear. I actually used 2 moves, Z murmured, as if a little dissatisfied with himself. He had first used the Great Sky-Shattering Handprint, and then the 9-Step Divine King Stomp, which indeed counted as 2 moves. However, his words once again made the faces of the Heaven Prides turn dull. Who exactly is this mysterious Heaven Pride? He killed a Heaven Pride with 2 moves, and he complained that he had used too many moves. Who is this person? He can't be a local Heaven Pride from the Sword Dynasty. His strength is almost at the level of Dihaotian. Yiguchen's face was incomparably solemn. The pressure brought about by Z reminded him of Dihaotian. Dihaotian was also at the 7th level of the Divine Dwelling Realm in the Infinite Wasteland Plains. It could be said that this mysterious genius Z was almost on the same level as Dihaotian, a supreme genius, or even a supreme genius. Who are you? Some Heaven Prides asked in a trembling voice. It was really frightening to kill a top Heaven Pride in 2 moves. With him around, not many people were qualified to compete for the Saint Dao fruit. Didn't you question why I am qualified to monopolize the Saint Dao fruit? It's because I am. Z raised his hand and took off the purple mask on his face inch by inch. As the mask was taken off, a handsome and valiant face with sword-like eyebrows appeared in front of everyone's eyes. That pair of strange purple eyes were like purple demonic stars. It was as if they could make people fall into a nightmare. Could you be? The faces of Jian Jinghong, Princess Luo Ho, and the other top Heaven Prides suddenly changed. Chapter 1077. Z took off the mask on his face, revealing his true face. He was indeed handsome and valiant, with an extraordinary appearance. However, the most eye-catching thing about him was his pair of purple eyes, which matched his purple hair. Purple hair and purple eyes. Such obvious characteristics made Jian Jinghong and the others think of a person. If it was just purple hair, they wouldn't be sure. Although purple hair was rare, it wasn't non-existent. However, a pair of purple eyes was extremely rare. Similar to Dihaotian's silver eyes, it could be considered a symbol. Could you be the one from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion? Jian Jinghong's expression was very serious. You have some foresight, Z said indifferently. What, you really are? On the other side, Princess Luo Ho and the other geniuses also looked serious. They were the geniuses of the top few dynasties in the 100 Great Empires. Although their foresight couldn't be said to be very high, it was definitely not limited to the dynasties. The geniuses of the 4 great empires had already roughly guessed Z's identity. Jian Jinghong tilted his head slightly and secretly transmitted his voice to Yiguchen, Brother Dugu, this is not good. I'm afraid this is really a tough one. Who is he? Yiguchen was puzzled. He didn't know much about some things in the Nantian region, so he didn't know. This should be the legendary genius of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion, Huang Qianqiu, Jian Jinghong said in a serious tone. Huang Qianqiu. Yiguchen was slightly stunned, then suddenly thought of something. He seemed to have heard of this name before. His reputation in the Nantian region was not much lower than Dihaotian's. The Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion was an overlord-level force. Together with the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion, the Starry Sword Pavilion, and the Misty Sword Pavilion, they were known as the 4 Great Sword Pavilions. To a certain extent, Huang Qianqiu was equivalent to the Luo Fu Sword Pavilion's Jun Xiaoyao, the Starry Sword Pavilion's Gu Xiaoyang, and the Misty Sword Pavilion's Yi Cangyue. However, the most important thing was that Huang Qianqiu was slightly stronger than the 3 of them. He was almost as strong as Dihaotian and the other supreme geniuses. Brother Dugu, have you heard of a saying in the Nantian region? Jian Jinghong's tone was serious. What saying? Yiguchen asked. The legendary genius, 1 emperor, 4 emperors. Jian Jinghong said. 1 emperor, 4 sovereigns. A dark light flashed through Yiguchen's eyes. He had indeed heard of this saying before. In the South Horizon region, the title of the most widely spread geniuses was the 10 Great Young Masters. But other than that, there was another explanation. 1 Emperor and 4 Sovereigns. 1 Emperor and 4 Sovereigns. In the South Horizon region, they represented 5 super geniuses of heaven whose strength surpassed their peers. He could be said to be the supreme overlord among the geniuses. One of the emperors represented Dihaotian. As for the 4 emperors, they were 4 peerless geniuses who were not much weaker than Dihaotian. People as strong as Gu Xiaoyang, Jun Xiaoyao, and the others were among the top 10 young masters, but they were unable to become one of the 4 sovereigns. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to become one of the 4 emperors. Brother Jingheng, do you mean? Yi Guqin's tone sank. That's right. Not only is Huang Qianqiu a top genius of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion, but he's also one of the 4 sovereigns. Jian Jingheng's face turned ugly. No wonder. Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. From the moment Huang Qianqiu arrived, Yi Guqin felt that his strength was not much weaker than Dihaotian. Now, it was indeed so. Huang Qianqiu, the number 1 person on the Sword Dynasty's sword leaderboard, is actually him. Oh my god, the legend of the 1 Emperor and 4 Sovereigns. I actually saw one of the 4 sovereigns. No wonder he boasted so boldly. No one here can defeat him. After Zi's identity was exposed, all the geniuses in the sacred palace looked at him with respect and fear. With Huang Qianqiu's strength, it was natural for him to kill Mo Guangdao in 2 moves. Seeing the respect and fear on the faces of the geniuses, Huang Qianqiu's face was indifferent. He was already used to it. However, at this moment, Huang Qianqiu noticed Yi Guqin's expression. Although Yi Guqin's eyes were serious, there was no trace of fear or cowardice. Interesting, no wonder you could pass the test of Mount Saint Crossing. Huang Qianqiu looked deeply at Yi Guqin. Even he had not completely passed Mount Saint Crossing. Huang Qianqiu had a feeling that he might be able to dig out many secrets from Yi Guqin. Dugu Wubai, what do you think? Now, I have the right to say such words. As long as you hand over the Sword Realm fusion technique, I'll be in a good mood and help you get rid of some ants. Huang Qianqiu placed one hand behind his back. His entire aura was noble and lofty. He had the right and ability to say such words. Hearing Huang Qianqiu's words, Shengguan Jingshen, Yin Zhu, and the rest's expressions changed. If Yi Guqin agreed to Huang Qianqiu's request, then Huang Qianqiu could kill them with one slap. Even Princess Luo Ho's red lips were tightly pursed. It was not that she did not have the ability to fight against Huang Qianqiu. After all, she had the Luo Ho life chart. However, if it was possible, Princess Luo Ho would definitely not want to face such a powerful opponent like Huang Qianqiu. On the other hand, Jin Kuei's expression was solemn under his mask. Surprisingly, he was not too fearful of Huang Qianqiu. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably give in to Huang Qianqiu's words without hesitation. However, who was Yi Guqin? Even Dihaotian was a tough opponent. If he was not even afraid of an emperor, why would he be afraid of one of the 4 princes? It was impossible for Yi Guqin to hand over the ultimate sword realm. I'm sorry, but that's impossible. Yi Guqin said coldly. As soon as he said that, the entire place fell silent. One by one, the sky prides widened their eyes and stared at Yi Guqin. Huang Qianqiu had an absolute background and strength to suppress everyone present. Who would dare to say no? However, Yi Guqin dared to. What a joke. He's courting death. Yin Zhu and the rest could not help but laugh as they heaved a sigh of relief. In their eyes, Yi Guqin's actions were undoubtedly courting death. What a pig trotter. Does he really not want to live anymore? Although Zhao Xiaodi was scolding him verbally, there was a tinge of anxiety in her eyes. Although there had been friction between her and Yi Guqin when they first met, their relationship had eased as they had traveled together on the treasure hunt. At that moment, Zhao Xiaodi was also worried about Yi Guqin's situation. He brought this upon himself. On the other side, the valiant young Duke Zhongshan sneered. Yi Guchen had embarrassed him in front of Zhao Xiaodi. At that moment, he was more than willing to see Yi Guchen killed. As soon as Yi Guchen rejected Yi Guchen, most of the skyprides present thought that Yi Guchen was done for. Even if Yi Guchen was a natural saint and had killed Hua Wuxiu earlier. However, the outcome was undeniable. Huang Qianqiu was not a skypride of a dynasty. He was a top-notch existence in the entire Nantian region. He stood at the peak with Di Haotian and the rest. How could such a person allow his words to be disobeyed? Even Huang Qianqiu himself thought that he had heard wrongly. He tilted his head slightly and looked at Yi Guchen with his devilish purple eyes. You, say that again. Since you heard it, why do I need to repeat myself? Yi Guchen's attitude was cold. Ha, ha. To everyone's surprise, Huang Qianqiu actually laughed. Interesting. How long has it been since I, Huang Qianqiu, met someone who dared to disobey me? Dugu Wubai, you've piqued my interest, so I've decided to capture you and plunder all your secrets. As soon as Huang Qianqiu finished speaking, the aura of the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. He stretched out his hand and suppressed Yi Guchen. Chapter 1078. Huang Qianqiu was one of the 4 sovereigns of the One Emperor and 4 sovereigns. He was extraordinarily powerful and had the backing of an overlord force like the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. It could be said that he was favored by the heavens. Throughout his cultivation journey, he had defeated all the geniuses and no one dared to go against him. Now, someone had chosen to go against his will. Even if that person was a natural sage, Huang Qianqiu would not allow it. He was the high and mighty sovereign, destined to look down on all living beings and command the world. At that moment, Huang Qianqiu did not hesitate and stretched out his hand. Vigorous true energy formed a huge palm print in the air. It was as if Mount Tai was about to collapse as it came crashing down on Yi Guchen. Huang Qianqiu, I, Dugu Wubai, am not a pushover that anyone can bully. Facing Huang Qianqiu's attack, Yi Guchen's true energy exploded, and vigorous lightning sword intent surged out. Streaks of lightning were formed in the air. Divine sword lightning manipulation art, heavenly lightning attraction. The 9-dragon thunder prison in Yi Guchen's hand shot up into the sky. The terrifying sword intent turned into lightning and swept out in all directions. There were even 6 thunder dragon spirits that appeared from the sword. The divine sword lightning manipulation art was augmented by the lightning sword Dao and the power of the 9-dragon thunder prison. It collided with Huang Qianqiu's huge palm print. Boom! Along with an ear-piercing boom, some of the geniuses were shocked to see that. The giant handprint actually annihilated the thunderbolt that Yi Guchen had unleashed. Moreover, its momentum did not diminish as it swept towards Yi Guchen. 1,000 lightning transformations. Yi Guchen used his sword technique again and collided with the palm print. He retreated quickly, and his bones cracked as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Guchen was injured by Huang Qianqiu's attack. Such strength! The surrounding skyprides of the 4 dynasties sucked in a breath of cold air. Yi Guchen's strength was beyond doubt. After all, he had killed Hua Wuxiu directly. And now, he could not even block one of Huang Qianqiu's attacks. You're indeed not weak. Yi Guchen's blood and qi churned in his chest. As a 7th-layer divine dwelling expert, Huang Qianqiu's every move contained overwhelming power. He's only slightly injured. Huang Qianqiu was really surprised this time. He had originally thought that this move would severely injure Yi Guchen and cause him to lose his ability to fight. But to his surprise, Yi Guchen actually managed to block it and only suffered a certain degree of injury. Interesting, but that's all. Huang Qianqiu attacked again. True qi surged behind him, and a golden figure appeared. It looked like a Vajra, suppressing the void and breaking all spells. Vajra palm. Huang Qianqiu struck again. With a push of his palm, a giant golden palm print appeared in the air, crushing everything in its path as it charged towards Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's ancient god power surged, revealing his ancient god form. The surface of his body condensed the ancient god motionless king armor. Ancient God Divine Royal Seal. Yiguchen also blasted out a golden seal, which looked like a golden sacred mountain. The power of the ancient god surged, and thousands of rays of light shot out. This inheritance. Huang Qianqiu's purple eyes were filled with surprise again. He did not immediately recognize Yiguchen's ancient god inheritance. But he could sense that this inheritance was extraordinary. This made Huang Qianqiu even more determined to capture Yiguchen alive. Boom! The Vajra palm and the ancient god divine royal seal collided. Vast waves of energy swept across the entire sacred palace. If not for the suppression of the pyramid, the entire sacred palace would have collapsed. In such an extreme collision, Yiguchen's body was once again violently sent flying. However, to everyone's surprise, Yiguchen made use of the recoil to charge towards the top of the pyramid. Almost at the same time, Jinkui and the other geniuses also rushed towards the top of the pyramid. In the eyes of the geniuses, Huang Qianqiu was indeed powerful. But the fruit of the sage was just too attractive. If these geniuses obtained it and handed it to the experts behind them, they might be able to create a heavenly tribulation sage. By then, even if they offended Huang Qianqiu, it would not be a big deal. After all, even an overlord-level force would not want to offend a heavenly tribulation sage. All of you are courting death. Huang Qianqiu's purple eyes flashed coldly as he watched the crowd rush towards the top of the pyramid. He formed the heaven-shattering palm with his left hand and the Vajra palm with his right. As he pushed forward, the geniuses either spat out blood or exploded. He stepped on the bloody bones and dashed towards the top of the pyramid. The first to reach the top of the pyramid was none other than Yiguchen. Yiguchen was the first to reach the top with the help of the shockwave and imminent skyline. Without hesitation, he tore open the sage's corpse with his bare hands. The sage's body was said to be indestructible. But after all, they had been dead for so long, and their divine power had been exhausted. That was why Yiguchen was able to break open their bodies. The fruit of the sage Dao was the essence that would automatically condense in the dantian of a sage's body after their death. Of course, there were also some sages who were unwilling to pass down their legacies and would automatically disperse the laws in their body and return to heaven and earth. But such sages were the minority. The moment Yiguchen tore open a sage's corpse, a vast power of laws surged out of the corpse's dantian. Yiguchen's face lit up with joy. Although there were 7 sage corpses at the top of the pyramid, it did not mean that there would be 7 fruit of the sage Dao. There might not be. Yiguchen was able to obtain a fruit of the sage Dao directly. It was quite rare. In an instant, Yiguchen took out the fruit of the sage Dao. The fruit of the sage Dao was milky white and branded with endless mysterious runes of laws. But at this moment, Yiguchen did not have time to observe it. He flipped his hand and put the fruit of the sage Dao into his origin ring. At the same time, Yiguchen once again probed the head of the sage's corpse. Because Yiguchen still needed to search for another item, the crystallized soul source. The crystallized soul source was the condensed soul power in a solid form. Generally speaking, only a sage's primordial spirit possessed such vast soul power that it could condense into a solid form. Even a celestial palace venerable who had condensed a soul palace in his sea of consciousness could only completely liquefy his soul power. Therefore, generally speaking, the crystallized soul source was most likely to remain in the body of a sage. As expected, Yiguchen found a crystal the size of a pigeon's egg in the sage's head. It was the crystallized soul source. Yiguchen plundered it as well. It seemed like he had searched for a long time, but in fact, it only took a short while. Almost at the same time, Jinkui also landed in front of the other sage's corpse. It was the corpse that was missing a little finger on its left hand and was holding a compass. Oh no! Yiguchen dodged and swept his sword at Jinkui, trying to stop him from touching the corpse. At this moment, a blue-robed figure wearing a sword master mask also rushed to Jinkui and blocked in front of him. He was Jian Er, second only to Jinkui among the sword masters of the aristocratic families. He was also a very powerful sword master. Jinkui, I'll help you block him. Jian shouted coldly. Yi Guchen frowned. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. As soon as Jian finished speaking, he turned around and stabbed at Jianke. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.